All right. Seeing that it's 6-ish, and we have the presence of a quorum, I'm going to open tonight's meeting. I think what the plan is here is to go right into the budget discussion first. Is that the idea, or do you want us to go through? All right, we'll go through that since, yeah. Well, since Janet's not here yet, I thought them. All right, anyway, as we do every evening, we open the floor to citizens' concerns. Anyone who wants to address the board about issues that are not listed on the agenda, we ask them to come forward and let us know what's on their mind. Is there anyone with a citizen's concern? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move on to the chairman's update. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry we had to delay the last two Board of Selectmen meetings in anticipation of storms, in which we got 34 inches and 12 inches respectively. But we thought it would be safer for those attending the meeting. Today, we just have to suck it up and vote the budget. As part of this chairman's update, I would like to publicly thank all our emergency management workers who put in long hours away from their families to ensure the safety of the people of Acton. This includes police, fire, dispatch, DPW, an excellent management team. Well done, ladies and gentlemen, well done. If your street or sidewalk hasn't been cleared yet, please be patient. They are working as hard as they can. This coming Saturday, February 7th, from 4 to 7 p.m., the town will be holding their winter carnival up at Narra, assuming there's enough snow. There will be games and events for the entire family, and it's free. Come skate or sled or enjoy one of the shows. And for all you skaters, join them for Friday night skate night, February 13th, on the pond at Narra. And finally, it is with sadness that I note the passing of Steve Baran. Steve, a former social worker, worked tirelessly on the Council on Aging Board for the past 10 years, as well as the Commission on Disabilities. He and his wife, Bernice, who works on the Acton Housing Authority Board, have contributed much over the years to make Acton a better place to live. There will be a memorial service for him Sunday, March 15th, at the Nagog Woods Clubhouse in Acton at 1 p.m. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Manager for the Manager's Minute.
Well, it seems like there's not a heck of a lot to talk about except snow. And I think you put it very well, Mr. Chair. You know, the crews have been working hard. It's been very difficult storms to keep up with. We've, because the equipment has been going virtually 24/7, we've lost two sidewalk plows, and they're being repaired. We also have ordered a new one, which is expected to be delivered on Tuesday. It was the last one in the United States, I might add, that was available. So crews are, still out there. Looks like we're going to have a multi-day event starting probably Saturday through Tuesday that might be another foot of snow by the time it's all done. So, our crews are holding up okay. They're very, they're exhausted. I think they enjoy the overtime, but there is a limit. At this point, we have depleted our snow and ice account. We had $526,000 budgeted, so we are technically in a snow and ice deficit for fiscal 15. In essence, what that means legally is that we could raise that snow and ice deficit on next year on FY16's taxes. We have traditionally, in the past, tried to absorb that deficit within the town's operational budget. That'll certainly be our game plan. I kind of view raising the snow and ice deficit in the next fiscal year as kind of a last resort. And I'm pretty confident that unless we have more blizzards like we had last week, that I'm confident we can probably be able to absorb that snow and ice deficit in the town budget. We might have to shift around priorities, et cetera, but I think we can probably figure that out. It's also our understanding that the governor may be applying for federal emergency aid, FEMA. MEMA, Massachusetts Emergency Management, has alerted us and all cities and towns to make sure we keep good track of our records. So if in fact we are awarded, or the state is awarded, emergency reimbursement, that we'll be in good shape to apply for some reimbursements from the storm. Short of that, in talking with the chair of the Open Space Committee, apparently Open Space is interested in perhaps pursuing acquisition of Magoon property on Piper Lane, in the process of getting an appraisal on that. And Tom Tidman and I have been working with representatives of Stowe and the Stowe Trust to get ready for the real estate closing on the Dunn property. If you recall, the Dunn property is really in two towns. It's in Stowe and Acton. The Conservation Trust in Stowe is acquiring the Stowe piece, and the agreed to closing date is May 14th, but we may have to do an A&R plan on our side just to make that happen. So we're working with obviously the planning department, et cetera, to try to bring the Dunn property to closure. And we had ALG, but I think we'll talk about ALG when we talk about the budget. So.
One question, Mr. Manager. You brought up an interesting point, and that was the MEMA reimbursement if it turns out that the emergency is declared. How does that affect the schools? You know, it's a regional school, so they're their own area. Do they apply? To the best of my knowledge, the reimbursement has specifically just been to cities and towns for work on their own infrastructures, the plowing, the moving of the snow, et cetera. At least that's the way it has been in the past. But they're responsible for clearing their own. Correct. On campus, et cetera, they do their own. Right? I asked the question because I happen to notice that J.D. Head's in the audience. So it may be a question you want to get answered, J.D., if there's any money out there to help out with your budget. So.
Just for clarification, the regional schools we've been able to apply.
You have to do microphone. I'm sorry. Once you wanted to talk, you became a problem.
JD had 62 Windsor Avenue. The regional school district has applied for MEMA reimbursement in the past for, I think it's been about 9 to 10 years ago, but it has happened in the past. And
Okay, good.
I'm glad you said that, though, because I hadn't seen that notice.
Yeah.
Well, we just, MEMA had sent us an email. I remember, I'll forward it to you.
Yeah.
Probably came in end of last week, maybe?
Yeah. For some reason, we have this great relationship with the town for sand and salt, so our reimbursements aren't really that high usually for things like that, but, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just didn't want you to lose an opportunity. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Manager. Good evening.
Good evening. Don't ask me how I am.
No.
We're in polite company, I can't say.
As long as you keep your microphone off, we're good.
The Russian School of Math.
Yes. 6 o'clock at the Russian School of Math. God help you if you ever want to drive by Main Street.
People who don't know that if somebody's flashing the headlights, it means you go.
All right, next up on the agenda, of course, is the budget discussion and the ultimate vote. I'm going to kick this to you, Mr. Manager, and let you give us your sense.
Okay, well, a lot of what we're going to talk about is really predicated upon the discussion at ALG this morning, and I know the whole board was at ALG this morning, so, I think everybody has a good sense of at least what the consensus was that was to be brought back to our respective boards, but kind of in essence, there was some concern about, a lot of concern, not some concern, I should say, so Mr. Noon doesn't jump on me, a lot of concern about recapturing the full impact of Proposition 2.5 from the prior year, which is some 985,000, I think. So the consensus was, in essence, between the town and the schools to absorb a cut of $585,000. So what we spent a good portion of today working on was coming up with a plan for the board to consider that would accomplish that. Based on the ALG plan, the town's share of the budget is about 37.9%, therefore the schools are 62.1%. And that mathematically, out of 585,000, gives us about $222,000 to reduce the budget if in fact the board agrees with the consensus that was arrived at this morning. So a couple of things, and one item that I'm going to be talking about was actually something we've been working on, thinking about really since Budget Saturday, but you do have actually I have bigger print than you, but you do have kind of a summary sheet here entitled Town of Acton FY Municipal Budget Document. And in essence, and kind of getting to the bottom line, we've accomplished the 222,000 by one, as you recall, when we budgeted OPEB at 532,000, that was our proportionate share of $1.4 million. It seemed like now we're talking about $1.2 million. So proportionally, we took our OPEB down about $78,000, and that was one of the adjustments that we're recommending. Also, as you recall, we had two new positions that we were discussing, the Director of Land Use Management and the Economic Development Director. And I have a more detailed presentation if folks are interested. But in thinking about it and noting that there are about 4 or 5 towns right now that are looking to fill positions that are basically a combined position, a Director of Land Use Management Director and an Economic Development Director combined. And when you think about it, and when you look at the job descriptions of both positions, there's a lot of similarities between what each one would do, particularly in shepherding development projects through the process. So kind of in thinking maybe that is a more effective way of moving forward. I think it's very important for the land use management position, but I think that person, we could find somebody, like, for example, Natick is out recruiting for that very type of position right now, and they've had some pretty good applicants from what I understand, but I think that we could find somebody with the right skill set, because mainly, and it's, it's very much like the finance department, where we have a finance director who basically just makes sure that the professional department heads are working together as a team, doesn't really get into micromanagement, and that is kind of what I envision the land use manager, to make sure everybody is working towards the vision that we've all agreed should be the vision for that division, and then obviously work on economic development issues. And I'll go to that PowerPoint in a little bit, but that by eliminating the economic development director position, there's $119,000. You will recall that we have an OPEB factor associated with news, so that's $12,000. And the final piece is cutting the general fund subsidy to ambulance by, I believe, $13,000. Right. I have a different spreadsheet than you, so. Same numbers, just different format, I'm sorry. So, yeah, $13,000. So all those adjustments together bring us to $222,000. And if, in fact, the board is in agreement with the consensus reached at ALG this morning, that would be my recommendation as to how we adjust. Now, as I talked about at ALG this morning, we have not arrived at closure on the Middlesex retirement assessment yet. I think we're all pretty confident that the the piece where the town was being assessed for some employees that should be assessed AB is going to get adjusted. It's unclear at the moment what would happen with the public safety employees that have been misclassified into Group 1 as opposed to the Group 4 they should be in. We've gone through our data. It looks like all the electronic transmissions we have sent Middlesex Retirement were correct for those 20 employees. Something got lost in translation. We are sending all that background information to Town Council, and hopefully we will be setting up a meeting with Middlesex to talk about this snafu, because as you recall, this Middlesex assessment is about $600,000 higher than what we anticipated. Probably the APS-AB issue is worth maybe $300,000, and the other one is worth $300,000. So we do have a strategy if in fact we have to absorb some or all of that $600,000, hopefully not all of it, and if that was the case, I'd be coming back with some additional recommendations on budget adjustments. But that is still kind of the wild card in the room. We've been told by Siegel Company that they're the actuaries that are contracted with Middlesex, that they expected to have some recommended adjustment in terms of the AB-APS piece probably next week. And as I said, we still have really just begun to fight about the Group 1, Group 4 piece. So I think that's important for everyone to understand. So I don't know, I can go through the PowerPoint, but I don't know if we want to talk about the consensus piece first before I do that.
What's the general consensus?
Point, and then we can talk about it all
Okay.
kind of as a
Okay.
combined.
Oh, Katie has spoken. That is the consensus, huh? Shut them all off, well, no.
Some of this presentation really goes back to when we initially proposed a land use department reorganization. And just as a reminder, back almost 4 years ago, the board issued charged myself as town manager to reorganize the land use departments. And when the board established that goal, we had several, obviously, thoughts about that. One was to improve customer service through standardization, basically using a permit tracking tool. That will be going live this July 1st. During school vacation week, a lot of data, et cetera, is going to be migrating to the cloud, and then we'll be ready to go July 1 for the permit tracking. Second goal was to have a single point of access, both physically and virtually, with the ultimate goal having a single point of access with GIS and permit tracking, where folks could utilize that tool from their home or office. Another goal was cross-training all the administrative assistants. Part of the design downstairs, and we'll be hopefully moving in about a month or a month and a half's time, is have an open layout that improves physical communication, and one of our goals is to have, especially the clerical folks, cross-trained on different functions, forms, et cetera, between the various departments in land use. And obviously look at greater staff efficiencies. The reorganized department would be headed up by the director. The staff would be more flexible in responding to changing needs and a changing regulatory environment. And just to utilize Mr. Mullen's favorite term, value proposition, creation of a land use department headed up by a land use and economic development director will maximize the use of staff being cross-trained to support work efforts among the departments. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, communities are trending towards this combined land use director, economic development function. And right now, the towns of Agawam, Natick, Dighton, Fitchburg, Plymouth are recruiting that combined position. We also are, a part of the value proposition is to transition from a paper filing system to an automated system, allowing staff to basically cross departmental boundaries much easier, both physically and virtually. And the value of continuing the automation of the permitting process using the Munis software is the ability to apprise not only myself, but other interested parties on issues, problems, successes, and we'll be able to leverage our investments in digitizing and GIS. The planning, or the land use and economic development director would mediate issues amongst the land use departments and bring the group to consensus. Also, the change we're going to see downstairs in the north wing will encompass a centralized filing system. It's very interesting now because you've got all these different departments, virtually every one of them having files in 8,000 properties in town, or 40,000 files, and nobody, we definitely have a stovepipe kind of structure, nobody's sharing. So, that's our ultimate goal, is to increase communication amongst these departments and as well as external entities. And just an example of the duties of this combined position would be to develop and implement short-term and long-term economic development strategies, working on public-private partnerships and business assistance programs, coordinating the permitting process amongst department heads, staffs, contractors, and the public. And to me, that issue is really crucial for economic development. I know over the past, we have heard a lot of complaints that things take too long, and obviously, as we all know, time is money, and people get very frustrated about that. And this director would be utilizing all the tools that the state allows, not only the new economic bill that passed this past summer, but some of the other laws that are on the books that would help with economic development. And the position will recommend adjustments in programs, activities, policies, procedures to further economic development goals and permit processes. And just as an aside, one thing, and I think, Mike, both you and I forgot to mention in our reports because it's been so crazy with weather, is we had the Mass Municipal Association meeting 2 weeks ago this Friday, I think? 2 storms ago anyways. And at the trade show, walking around looking at booths, I stopped by a booth by the Donahue Institute, which is a kind of a governmental study arm of UMass Boston, and they've done a lot of work in economic development. And I talked to the individual working the booth. I will be meeting with a professor from UMass Boston next week, weather permitting, to talk about some of the questions that came out on Budget Saturday. What kind of metrics are feasible to judge the success of any type of economic development activity in the town, any position, et cetera. So as I said, have a meeting, I think it's next Tuesday, with this professor, and hopefully glean some ideas and maybe how UMass Boston might be able to assist us in the area of economic development. And in terms of solutions and efficiencies for the community, as I said, very similar to the finance department, the director will provide the needed oversight to ensure the most efficient use of resources that are being utilized and make sure those resources are allocated to the projects and efforts where they're needed, and even working with non-land use departments like fire and engineering, because when you have a new, for example, subdivision plan or any type of major development, you really need even some of the land use departments to weigh in with, turning radiuses for fire trucks and things like that. We did talk about the digitized and centralized records. Once again, everybody's got 8,000 files of property. This will be consolidated, have central filing, save duplication of work, and they'll all be filed digitally together with archival material. Currently, about 25% of the floor area before they moved out was filing cabinets, and this will help with a more open concept. In terms of opportunities, the creation of a land use director will reduce the number of staff reporting directly to me as town manager, which, when we have 20 some odd department heads can be a challenge sometimes. In addition, pulling all the land use personnel and boards together, really with the ultimate goal of better customer service. The land use economic development director will incorporate a feedback loop, basically to review and assess the direction and impact of the reorganization, making sure it's going in the right direction, and validate that the outcome is correct. The renovation going downstairs will provide versatile space. Once again, elimination and duplication of records. We'll have a conference room that can be utilized at night, areas for small meetings. One thing that was very crucial was space to really roll out blueprints and plans and look at them, and have some flexible space for future technology upgrades. In the end, having a versatile space is cost-effective, will save valuable time and money while maintaining access to digital records for staff and customers. So obviously our goal is a positive customer experience, and I think it really cuts. It's not just, economic development, really it's our citizens as well, and if our citizens do an addition, that's good for the economy as well, so it kind of cuts both ways. This will eliminate, right now before they moved out, you have the feature of customers kind of wandering from department to department because maybe they needed to go to the health department, but they went to the building department, or they had to go see the zoning enforcement. This reorg will eliminate that and be a one-stop shop. And also, through the permitting software, et cetera, we're going to have 24/7 self-service, which is something we really need. And the documents will be more easily accessed. They won't get lost. Hopefully, have quicker turnaround time in the processes. Once again, with the land use director and economic development director, there's certainly a possibility of reducing town council time, because right now I think we do experience that perhaps each department may go to town council maybe on the same project with different questions, and this would certainly help consolidate that. And it's my view that the land use director, economic development director would be the champion and spokesperson for implementing all the changes that we have set as our goals. And finally, this was something we put together really quickly this afternoon, but just a very simple organizational structure that just would show kind of chain of command and who report to whom. Am I on the wrong one? Oof. I'm going to tell Mark we're running out of batteries. I did hit the button. Okay. So that is kind of my presentation. Once again, I think it makes a lot of sense to think about combining those two duties and working with an entity like UMass Boston to determine how we can develop a system that really can provide some metrics of how we have some challenges, and I think we've talked about that. Not being necessarily close to a major highway is one of the challenges, and what are realistic metrics when you give some of the constraints we talk about. So I'm looking forward to meeting with Professor Metzler next week.
Okay. Thank you. Questions? Jenna?
I actually don't have a question. I was one of the few people at Budget Saturday whenever, in January, who actually liked both of the proposed FTEs, and I like the way you're achieving a certain amount of efficiency by combining the positions. I happen to think that economic development in this town needs a big boost, and it just can't be handled by a volunteer committee alone. It just isn't going to work. And I also happen to know from having worked on Conservation Commission that there's a really profound need for some sort of coordination that just isn't happening among the department directors. I was just at a conservation meeting the other day, and they're working on a project that already went through planning board, I think a year ago, and they just were realizing that they should have been looking at the planning board decision to find out what the planning board said, and I think there was some chagrin that they hadn't, really dug into the decision earlier. So I think that this position will help to eliminate some of that, what you call the stovepipe mentality.
And just as an example, I talked about the Dunn property during my town manager's report, but once again, it's kind of a stovepipe. Here's a piece of property we want to acquire, but there was no real big picture oversight that basically saw until we talked to town council that we probably have to do an A&R plan. And now, obviously, planning board, the planning department needs to get rolled into that, and we have time constraints because the agreement is to close by, May 14th. And I think this position would have probably recognized that sooner and gotten that moving sooner.
And then my only other comment is that, I've already brought it up with you, is that this whole stormwater management business complying with the EPA's MS4 permit, which just came out last year, I think that this has been an ongoing issue with the Water Resources Advisory Committee, but just how to get the departments that all have a little finger in stormwater management to coordinate things, I think it would be great if among the many skill sets that this person brings to the job is a little bit of understanding about that permit, because I don't think that any one department director currently really understands the whole thing, and it's a big responsibility. But so something to think about. But thank you. That's all I have for now.
Let the record show that the manager's nodding. Yes, Franny. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Ladies before gentlemen.
I'll be very quick. I think this makes total sense. From being on the EDC, the Economic Development Committee, it really seems that one of the big issues for businesses is how they deal with the town and the speed at which they go. And I always remember this anecdote by the former mayor of Holyoke, who was the town manager in Maynard for several years. And he talked about how they got this big lab, this big computer lab to be built out there, and they really made things go through quickly, and they were able to sell themselves. And they had actually water power, which really helped the project. But the point was that I think having somebody, it's very tied. So I think this is a great decision, actually. I also like the idea of maybe sharing one with another town, but this seems like the right decision right now for us. So,
Peter.
I assume this is still connected to the meals tax passing, filling this position?
Well, I think it is only because, and I think, I don't remember what point of view it was, Steve, was it last year or whenever, but I think FinCom always has taken the position that new positions should have maybe a new revenue source tied to it, so I would say yes.
Yeah, I just want to point out, I would assume, what was it, was the meals tax is like 238 grand, something like that.
270?
278.
Yeah.
So if the meals tax doesn't pass,
Yeah.
then not only does this position not get filled, but
Right.
the rest of the money that what I assume you'll be using for regular operating
Well,
expenses
it
won't be
was
available
the
either.
it was the fixed route transportation as well.
Okay.
Now, in the ALG plan, that meals tax revenue has already been worked into that, so that would change the whole ALG plan as well, if it didn't pass.
Okay, and I just also, these are two full-time positions you're now combining into one, so
Correct.
it's a different, there are going to be other duties that you're going to have to eliminate, and would it be your plan to have the Land Use and Economic Development Director staff the Economic Development Committee and continue to have the Planning Department staff the Planning Board?
Yes.
Okay. And then I had a question about exactly what were land use departments, and you kind of answered it with the chart there.
Yeah.
Health
I mean,
and-
there are some departments that kind of come and go out of it, like engineering.
Right.
Engineering
That's what
kind
I
of
was
has
gonna
their
ask about.
feet in
Okay.
various places and things
Right.
like that, but.
Right, but health is because of the septic issues, is that?
Yeah, well, septic, yeah, I mean, health is interesting because it straddles a variety of areas, but it really, as it relates to, septic and things like that. I mean, they wear many hats between, disease and septic and food service. But even food service, because you have restaurant inspections, there's a lot of synergy between the different departments who look at restaurants even, for example.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, I would just also say that I went at the Mass Municipal Conference to the Economic Development Forum that they had there. I mean, they were all big cities. The people that spoke were Market Basket's general counsel. I think we have unique issues beyond just where we're located. I mean, I was on the Zoning Board of Appeals when Walmart wanted to move into the auto auction site, and there was no way that the town was going to agree to that. Even if Market Basket wanted to move there,
Right.
there's no way the town's going to agree to something that impact, so
Right.
it's different kinds of businesses that I think that.
Yeah, and I think,
we are
I
focusing.
think we talked about this a little on Budget Saturday, but I think one of the challenges in this position really is to try to figure out, what does the town accept? I mean, a lot of communities have dealt with some of their economic development issues through big box stores, and as you say, that probably won't play here. So, what is the target? What are we looking for that, would be a good mix for the town?
Okay, I don't know if we're open for general questions, but I just also had a question about the ambulance, the cut 13 grand for the ambulance fund. I assume that mostly was for firefighters' salaries, right? Was it?
Well, it's a variety of issues. It's not just firefighters' salaries. I mean, we traditionally had a, is that a fire? The chief is listening.
Please exit in an orderly fashion.
Oh, my God. I'm getting really paranoid. But also included in that budget were some, I guess you would say perhaps some startup costs for ALS that, because of our inability to reach an agreement with the union, implementation has really been kicked off to FY17. So, we looked at that, plus with their reserve position in ambulance, it was our kind of feeling, our budget group's consensus this morning that 13,000 wouldn't affect it really that much.
Okay, thank you.
Katie?
Thanks, Steve. I think this is a really, I think this is the right approach. I'm a big supporter of the Economic Development Director, and I wasn't quite sure on the Land Use Director, but I think combining them is really innovative and a good direction to go in. And I'm very interested to hear, and I hope we'll get an update on, what some of these metrics are that the Donahue Institute recommends, because I think that's important, and it's something just to remember that, they're things that are going to take a while to see. So, I hope we don't all expect to kind of see great movement on this in a year. We're not going to all of a sudden have shifted the, business versus home ratio by the next fiscal year. But, I think that there is opportunity to grow. Peter brought up the point I wanted to bring up about the meals tax. I think, like you said, we've worked it into the ALG plan, and now we're sort of tying less to this than we were before. So if that doesn't pass on town meeting floor, we're going to have some issues. So I think that needs to be a discussion about, what happens and what gets cut if, what's the backup plan if that doesn't go down. And I guess the timing of the warrant articles will be that we vote that before we do the budget.
Well, I think that we should probably have a discussion about that in the very near future, because Mark and I, and Mike, I can't remember if you were at that meeting or not, met with representatives of the League of Women Voters. They've got very definitive ideas about ordering, and I think in their view, they'd rather vote budget first than deal with things like meals tax and other things. I don't share that. But that's their
I
opinion.
love the League of Women Voters.
It's instrumental part of the budget. I don't see how you can not.
Right, so I think, anyways, I
But the
think
bottom
that's.
line is, it's, you know, it's the selectmen's warrant, so
Right.
ordering is really the board's domain.
Yeah, but so I think we need to have that discussion, and I think we'll need to have kind of a Plan B if the meals tax doesn't pass, because I don't think it's a matter of just taking out the fixed route and the, there's not a good acronym for this, unfortunately, the Land Use and Economic Development Director, yeah.
Delummed it.
Yeah, it's no good, I don't like that. And then just as an aside, you had mentioned, you know, the state, the economic development bill, the jobs bill that they had passed this summer. I'm pretty sure a lot of that has been gutted with the recent cuts, a lot of the programs that were in that, so just as an FYI, that might not be
Yeah,
happening.
unfortunately, individual from Mass Office of Business Development is meeting with the Economic Development Committee tonight, talking about that very thing. Oh, did it get canceled? Okay, all right. Okay,
His was good. Okay.
okay. All right, well, yeah, he, you know, he really knows his stuff, so it'll be interesting when it does get rescheduled.
Yeah, in my day job, I just happen to know that's affecting us, so that's been tricky. I think I had one other point, but no, like I mentioned, I think this is a great way to go, and I appreciate you guys kind of rethinking this and seeing how other towns are dealing with it, and I think this makes a lot of sense, so I'm very supportive.
And then, I guess, the issues that I've got is, I'm concerned about the metrics, because it's going to be one thing to say this is a better plan, but we need to be able to demonstrate this to the public, to indicate why it's a better plan. I think there's some real pluses to having the economic development tied to land use, because I find in all of the dealings we've had, there is not a clear focus within the town departments on when a developer comes before them. You've got ones pulling in all different directions, not because of any kind of animosity or anything, they see it as that's their job. It also becomes more critical as we look to develop places like Kelly's Corner, where, to Peter's point, we don't want to just open it up to development. We want to have development that we want within the town, so the kind of businesses that we're looking for. And so I think it'll be good, because those are the conversations. I could see this person having constant communication with the property owners in town, business owners, to know what's going on and know when opportunity comes up for the town, and whether in fact there are joint efforts that we might want to participate in, and to build it the way we want it. So I'm hoping that this goes through. I'm hoping the additional sales tax, or the local option sales tax, goes through, because I think that this would be something very useful to the town. And every business that comes to town and starts doing business, it pays taxes, and that relieves taxes on everybody else. So, anyway. Okay. And now, having heard that, we need to get a sense and/or a vote on whether, in fact, we agree with what was discussed at the ALG this morning. To reiterate what the town manager said, is the proposal to come back to the board is that we want to reduce the budget, the overall budgets, by $585,000. And that was projected to be part of the using previous levy capacity in order to fund that. So we would not be using that previous levy capacity. We would do it in cuts instead. That 585 would be divided up, and I'm using your numbers, so if I'm off, then, but it's, the schools would be, it's all Steve Barrett's fault. We won't put him under land use. The schools would be responsible for $363,000, and we would be responsible for $222,000. Steve has laid out the way he would achieve the $222,000 in this sheet, if you weren't following, the proposed fiscal budget cuts that are halfway down the page. in 16, which show the $78,000 in OPEB, the OPEB factor of 12,000 for the position, and the new position of 100, reducing, taking out one of those positions, because originally we were talking about the land use director and an economic director. So now we've kind of combined them into one, and that would save $208,000, and then $13,000 pulled from the ambulance enterprise fund, which would bring us up to the $222,000. So, thoughts? Yeah, Peter?
Can I just back up a little bit to the meeting this morning and make sure I understand where the group wound up with $585,000? I know that the backup shows that we have $985,000 in unused levy capacity due to us under raising taxes less than 2.5% in prior years. Was that a different number than was in there last month? Is that part of the discussion that caused this? And why, what's the $585,000 out of the $985? You'd then be spending $400,000, obviously, of the levy capacity that we have available, right?
Correct.
So the 585 was just a compromise between the three groups?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I do think, having worked in a lot of towns, that having consensus between the FinCom, particularly the Regional School Committee and the Selectmen, and particularly given what happened last year, is a very, very valuable thing. And I think we need to show the town that the groups can work together to come to a reasonable consensus, even though it means not being able to provide the maximum amount of services that each entity might want to try to provide, so.
So
Katie?
I agree with trying to reduce the spending and going for the 222K in cuts. I'm a little concerned about getting 78,000 of that from OPEB. I'd rather that we keep, I know that the new number, at least from the school side, has been aiming at the 1.2. I'd rather that we keep our number up. I think also it'll make whatever transition next year, if we're still at, 1.4, if we go for the 1.7, it's gonna make that jump easier. I have a question about, I'm wondering, just looking at some of the other things that are on here, and I'm wondering about painting town hall, if that's something that could be put off another year, or is it something that really needs to happen in FY16?
Well, I mean, I think it's one of those things that, yeah, maybe we could put it off another year, but we're going to have to do it sooner than later. I think this is the second year Dean has postponed it. And just going back to OPEB, just keeping in mind that in addition to this OPEB number, be it 532 or 78,000 less, we are still also budgeting for the OPEB factor for new positions. Those include the 8 police officers that were approved over the last 2 years. So there's still more money going into OPEB
Right.
than just this piece.
True.
The annual.
Yeah, and I guess ours was up last year over what we would have done, because we covered the schools portion
And the
of it.
1.7 is incorrect.
Well, sure, okay.
No,
Yeah,
I
okay.
say that, I've been trying to get him to correct it on the spreadsheet, but it's good you know that it's not any easier for us than it is for you guys, but the 1.4 was kind of the leveling off
Okay,
point.
okay.
When we got the last Siegel report,
Yeah.
that made actuarial sense. Now, I believe we're going to be having Siegel do this again in the spring of this year?
I've lost track. I don't know if it's this year.
It's every 2 years.
Yeah, I know. I just
think
can't
it was
remember the
spring
last
this
time we
year.
did it. I just don't
Yeah,
remember.
no, it'd be this year.
Their report will be as of this past December 31st, but we won't see it probably until July, if it goes
Okay.
the same way as the last time.
But what I mean is, so we may, based on the OPEB factor, the contributions we've made to it, when they do their extrapolation again, it may come down, we may be looking at 1.1 next year as opposed to 1.4. It's not we're looking to satisfy the OPEB requirements, not,
But so we're comfortable that 1.4 would, I don't want to say this, that would be more like 1.4 and less like 1.7 next year. Is that, just so, trying
That
to get
is
as many
correct.
opinions on this.
We're as comfortable as we can be.
Okay, yeah, obviously, I know, lots of balls in the air on that one, but, okay. Okay, so with that, then I'm fine, I'm fine with these recommendations, and I think that, that this is a good way to kind of bring our budget down, and hopefully the school committee is about to have a similar discussion starting in 5-10 minutes, so.
All right. Janet or Franny, do you have any thoughts on this? Well, I think that, sorry,
Sorry, I'm very slow to react.
That's all right.
Sort of distracted, but no. This is not related to this, but I had a question about, the stabilization fund proposal that you had back, 2 million, and I know that FinCom had proposed a much lower number, and I was wondering well, first of all, I was wondering if there was going to be a lot of shoring up or substantiation of what was going to happen with that, or whether that is something that could be cut back a little bit if the things don't work out. I don't know.
I mean, it certainly could be cut back. It was, just, I guess from our point of view, the fact that, we have nearly $10 million in reserves, so putting $2 million in stabilization really didn't substantially affect our reserves. We still have like 8 million, and, technically, it isn't a reserve. I mean, it kind of is a reserve, and it just takes a 2/3 vote to take it out, so, it's still there. I just thought that, it might be a little aggressive, and I think it's something we could talk about and talk with FinCom about it, but,
I mean, I think having a stabilization fund is a good idea. And
we have
obviously
one, we just don't
FinCom
have any money in
agrees.
it right now.
I mean, if it's one of those instances where FinCom says, whoa, so much money, you're being so aggressive, as you say. But, it just was a question I had. Thanks.
although any money that does not go into the stabilization fund is just reserves. So it's then, I mean, it doesn't require 2/3, it requires
Doesn't change his budget whatsoever, so.
Okay, any other questions on this issue, or are we going to vote on this? Ready to vote? Well, if that's the motion that's made. Did you have a question, Franny?
I just had a comment. I actually liked the idea that Steve had suggested of us putting in more proportionally than the town. That got decided away, but I just wanted to say that I thought that was a nice idea. But I really like the cuts that you've chosen, so.
No, I think you mean what Mike suggested, that we would cut more
Oh,
of
was
our
it Mike?
budget than, yeah.
Oh,
Can I ask why? Again, I mean, I'll make my comment again, that their budget is going up close to their assessment is going up 7.8%. Our budget is going up 3%.
This actually, if you accept these changes, it'll be up 1.62%.
Right. So it's a little unclear to me why we would cut even more of our budget when we're one-third of the budget to begin with, and we're going up at the budgets as proposed before tonight, ours was a much more reasonable increase than their proposal.
I guess having just listened to Budget Saturday, as most of us did, it just felt like there was some compelling need, and that
Suppose I'd argue that we have
I
compelling
didn't
need.
like cutting services to the students.
So you'd prefer to cut services to
Citizens.
the taxpayers?
I have a candidate.
We're all the same people. We're all the taxpayers.
Right, but if you're going to cut our budget instead of the school budget, it will cut services to the citizens.
Even the citizens who don't have children.
I understand that. It just seemed compelling. I just thought it was I guess I wanted to appreciate that offer, because I thought I like when people offer from other sides of the aisle, so to speak, but I don't even like the thought of an aisle between town and school, so that's all. But I like the way it ended up, so.
Yes, Janet.
It just reminded me of something, that there is an item in the operating budget, which is a sore issue for me, and I agree with Katie, I hate to be cutting back on our OPEB contribution, where there's a big new operating budget item that, if it went away, would take care of a lot of our problems, but I think that, well, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. I mean, I don't think we have a fat budget, and we've agreed to try to reduce fine savings, so as long as we don't keep doing this OPEB reduction every year, I'd like to see what happens with the new assessment in the spring and see if we're actually more on top of things than we assumed. I would like to know that, but if we aren't, I think that we have to be prepared in the coming year to sort of catch up if we're behind. I don't want to fall behind, because that's just going to become more costly if we procrastinate.
Well,
So-
well, one of the changes that's before the Health Insurance Trust is going from RDS on MedX to EGWP or EGWP. If that occurs, that's going to reduce the costs on both sides, both for the retiree and for the town. So that will affect our OPEB going forward as well. So, and it's a fairly dramatic amount. I'm concerned, considering that we split retirees' health care benefits 50-50. So it'll be the same on both sides of the equation. That will affect the extrapolation that they do. So I'm hoping that when they come back to look at what we've done in town, both from the donations that we've put into OPEB already, which now have the magic of compounding because, of course, we can invest them, so they may have actually made more money, considering the stock market has done so well over the past year. It may have done...
We don't invest in stocks.
No, but the market, raises all boats. But nonetheless, it's a case where I think there have been things that have impacted our OPEB obligation anyway, and it'll demonstrate it when they do the next assessment. So I'm not as concerned about it, is the reason why I'm saying that.
And then plus, I don't know if we're going to be revisiting plan design or whatever, because that 3-year agreement is about to lapse, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I don't know if there are any more savings to be gotten
I
out
mean,
of
we
that,
we did
but-
have a meeting with the informal group to talk about EGWP and just educate them about that, just so they could relate to their retirees as to something might be happening to them.
Okay.
One motion?
Yeah, I'd entertain a motion.
So are we moving to recommend, or is that the correct language? No, well, okay.
Yeah, I'll move that we accept Steve's recommendation for cutting the budget by $222,000.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have Peter made the motion, Franny seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Well, we've got 10 minutes before our site plan special permit amendment. So I'm going to take a whack at our consent agenda. How's that? And maybe we can actually get out of here before the next snowstorm. Yes?
Didn't we have to approve the budget? Didn't we just approve those cuts to it?
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. We do have to approve the budget.
We have to vote to recommend.
I mean, you may want to vote to recommend a budget based on these changes, because tomorrow, under the charter, is our deadline to submit
Yeah,
the
no,
budget to
that's a
FinCom.
very good point. Good catch on that, Franny. We never would have thought it was you who would have thought of that.
Thanks.
So we appreciate your presence here. All right, well then, since you brought it up, I would entertain a motion that,
I move that we approve the budget for fiscal year 16 with the cuts that we just approved.
Do
okay,
you want to just say an amount, say the
Yeah.
amount that's on there? So move to approve the budget of 31,954, blah, blah, blah.
Okay?
Oh,
It's the budget dated February 2nd, 15, the fiscal year 16 municipal budget document, and it's $31,954,851.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Franny and a second by Janet.
Did you get the number, Lisa? Okay, 31,954,851.
Or whatever you write down.
Yeah, got a little, couple million in there, got a raise.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? I thought it was a good budget this year, by the way, Steve.
Yeah, no, that's great.
All right. We'll try the consent. All right, as I read the consent items, as you know, if there's anything that you want to hold for further discussion, please say hold. Item 6, request from the Garden Club to reserve Acton Common May 16th, 2015 for their sale. Number 7, committee appointment Nancy Gerhardt, Associate Member, Acton 2020 Committee. Number 8, committee appointment Carol Girolamo, full member, Recreation Commission. Number 9, committee appointments Florence Ross and Richard Calandrella, Acton Nursing Service Task Force.
Hold.
Okay. Number 10, committee appointment Robert Skillen, Barbara Wilson, and Marion Maxwell to the Senior Center Study Committee. Number 11, accept gift Recreation Department, especially for pets, enclosed as a gift route totaling $2,000 from Especially for Pets to support the 2015 Summer Concert Series. Number 12, Acton Community Housing Committee request for housing funds. And number 13, request for disposal of obsolete items, Acton Memorial Library. All right, you held that, Katie? What's the issue on the nursing service?
Yeah, I apologize. I read this originally like a week and a half ago, or 2 weeks, whatever, at this point. But if I recall correctly, I feel like the VCC had recommended that Dick be an associate member because there were just issues. So, but he's on here as a full member, I think.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, I just wanted to know.
No, and in fact, I think that he should become an associate member
yeah.
because one of the issues that he has is, of course, his health.
Right, exactly.
It's more that than
Right.
anything else.
Yeah, no,
It's
I
not-
definitely want him involved, and I
Right.
appreciate his stepping forward, but I was just trying to remember their recommendations. I'm wondering if we could rephrase it to committee appointments for Florence
I'm
Ross.
sure we can
full,
change it.
Member, and Richard Calandrella, associate member.
Okay, why don't we vote the others, and we'll
Yeah.
come back and we'll, in that time, you can think about how you want to phrase that.
Sure.
Okay? All right, so,
Move to approve consent agenda items 6 through 8, 10 through 13.
do I have a second? All right, we have Katie as a second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, any abstentions? No, it's unanimous. All right, and now number 9, Katie?
Move to approve Florence Ross as a full member and Richard Calandrella as an associate member to the Acton Nursing Service Task Force.
All right, second?
Second.
All right, and any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that's a good deal. And seeing that it's almost 7:10, we can, and here he is right here. Why don't you start moving up to the table, Leo? I think we've got you on for 7:10, so.
Okay.
Are you expecting George to be?
No, George won't be able to make it.
Okay.
This evening. I did call Roland and left a message at the planning board.
Okay.
Janet, you also have a message too.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think I saw, yes, Roland's here, so if we have any questions. Roland, why don't you snuggle up to the front here, so when we need to talk to you, you won't have to run up.
Can I sort of provide an overview? This is a...
Yes, you can. I was just going to say.
Just because I would like to have this sort of go efficiently, and a lot of the questions that the departments had about this project were resolved, as you saw in the correspondence that was in our packet. The Samsky and McNary engineer, who unfortunately, George DeMacarakis, who can't be here tonight, provided a letter in which a lot of the issues relating to the site were resolved. I don't want to go into great detail, but engineering department weighed in and said that all their questions were resolved. And the planning department provided a fairly lengthy updated memo saying that from a zoning bylaw perspective, that the revised site plan satisfied them. I did have a talk with Roland Bartle about sort of the zoning bylaw perspective and exactly what our leeway was in addressing some of the components of the plan. And I was really focusing on, I think if all the engineering and all the technical details are fine, I thought, okay, the two things that this board is going to be concerned about are, one, the cottage, and two, the ramp. And as to the cottage, Roland said, well, we're not really in a position to address the use, even whatever we might think about it, but it's allowed in that district. So, but I think that the Design Review Board has reviewed the plans and submitted comments, and we could require as a condition of approval that the applicant confer with DRB in greater detail, because they had concerns about just the exterior. We're talking about the exterior. They did talk about pathways and things like that. I think that there's an explanation of why it's not set up the way you would expect a normal single-family residence to be set up. But, so that's on the cottage. I did ask about, well, why a residence? What about an office? You could have an office that would basically look like a cottage, and what would the difference be? The difference would be basically more parking spaces, and the site already has more than enough parking to cover the usage. So that's not really an issue. As to the ramp, this, of course, raises the concern about about the project that we've heard about before. That's, I guess, on appeal pertaining to the car museum and what the proposed use of the ramp really is. I think that to address any concerns we have, and also to maybe preclude the need for us to have the project come back before us, Roland had suggested that we could approve the ramp, but condition it on condition its construction on the granting of a permissible use under the zoning bylaw that would require that ramp. Because right now, as far as I know, there's no approved use. I mean, he still has to get a permit for it. I mean, because otherwise if we start talking about, well, you can't use it for a car museum if the car museum isn't approved or something like that. If you get too specific, then the risk is that then we'll end up having it back before us. But Roland is here. He can explain a little bit more about what he's talking about, but I would suggest that if we decide to approve, we should have conditions that incorporate all of the planning department's pertinent comments, Stamsky and McNary's comments, the design review referral, and then also mention the Conservation Commission's order of condition, their decision. It was 2014. They had certain requirements, and I think that those things that we just need to refer to that decision to make sure that whatever happens on that site, it comports with what the Conservation Commission decided. This is one of those things where we need that land use management person to kind of coordinate this stuff and make sure all roads lead back to one place, that all gets dumped into one big decision. So anyhow, but that is all. I'm trying to sort of distill what the issues are that are remaining.
Okay. Let me interrupt because I didn't read the public hearing.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. The Acton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on February 5th, 2015, postponed from February 2nd, 2015, and January 26th, 2015, at 7:10 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room, 204 at the Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, on the application of Weatherby Plaza LLC, 97 Great Road, Acton, Mass., for a site plan special permit, #7/10/9-422, site modifications with an addition to an existing structure as required under Section 10.4 of the Acton zoning bylaw at 107 through 115 Great Road, Acton, Mass. 01720. The application and accompanying plans can be inspected at the Town Hall during normal business hours. Okay, now that we took care of the legalese, do you want to have Roland get up and speak to the issue, or?
I think maybe it would be helpful to have Roland just provide his perspective of all of the different feedback that he's gotten that's reflected in the planning department memo and all the other, and then I think board members should ask questions of
And
whomever.
of Leo?
Ask questions of whomever, but Leo, you'll get your chance, but just.
No, Jan, I just wanted to correct one of the things you said. Everything you said was fine.
Yeah.
But there is a permitted use with a building permit on 107 Great Road, lower level, for industrial equipment rental and leasing issued by the planning department. So I have a building permit for 107 lower and a building permit for 107 upper. Now, that ramp can suit a lot of uses, of course, but it's suited for the industrial equipment rental and leasing. Now, if in fact the litigation goes positive for the plaintiff, it very well could be used for automobiles. But I'll assure you, until the litigation's over, or until we have other permission and so on, there will not be any automobiles in there. There'll be equipment, there'll be things of equipment, and other than that, if you want to start with Roland, that's fine. There's 3 things of concern, 2 of them that I've already handled, a few of them that Roland needs to have, make it subject to, which I was going to do, but if you want to start with Roland, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, Mr. Bertolami, just to spare you from having to explain, I'll let Roland, Mr. Bartle will do the explanation.
Okay.
And then the board members will ask questions, and I'll let the chairman manage that.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay,
Sure.
no, I'm just the assigned selectman, so I have to sort of do the little overview.
That's fine.
But after that,
Okay.
it's a free-for-all, so thank you.
No, it won't be a free-for-all. This is fairly simple, I think, this time. I think.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, board members of the board, I'm speaking as a reviewer of the plan, not as a representative of the applicant, just to make that clear. So yes, we did get a revised plan. It's in your package, and the plan satisfies and answers pretty much all of the zoning questions that we had going into this in the fall of last year. So to mention a number of things, there were questions about whether the drainage actually complied with zoning, and unbeknownst to us, there was actually a letter in our files, and I have a little bit of egg on my face there, from the consultant reviewing engineer dating back to 2010 that certified that the drainage work was completed according to the plan at that time, which complies with zoning. So once that was found, engineering said they have no further questions. So we're okay with that. There were numerous zoning questions that I don't reiterate all of those. You see in my memo, every time I say the plan complies with zoning, demonstrate zoning compliance, that's all set. So I'm moving to the other comments. The spiral staircase is not shown on the plan on the building 107, the closest to Great Road. The applicant, Mr. Bertolami, has a building permit issued for conversion of the upstairs into 2 apartments, and I assume under building code you need to have a second egress for that, and so there is a spiral staircase from the outside on the back end of the building, or on the side end if you're looking from Great Road. And for completeness, I feel that should be shown on the plan. It changes the zoning numbers just a little bit, but it wouldn't make any difference as far as zoning compliance is concerned. There's a freestanding sign that was approved by the planning board that's not shown on the plan, but it's been installed. It happens to be, we believe it's in the wrong location. It doesn't meet the setback requirements, so that needs to be looked at. But again, I think that can be a condition of site plan approval. There's a bike rack hanging around that is in the wrong place. It might be frozen to the ground right now, but...
For some reason, Roland, it seems to move. I don't know what it is.
Okay, whatever it is, but it's not in the place where it's shown on the site plan that was approved, where
Well,
I think
it's
it's supposed
portable,
to
it's
be.
not bolted down, so...
Yeah, so that may be the problem, but anyways. So there is an errant parking lot delineated on a driveway that's going to the proposed cottage that probably should be removed. In the
sorry?
back, huh?
There's a what? I'm sorry, I missed that.
The plan indicates that when you go around the back, way back building is it 113 or 115? The
113
carriage
would be the
house.
carriage house.
The carriage house. There's parking spaces along the carriage house, facing the carriage house from the rear.
Yes,
And those parking spaces are delineated or marked on the pavement, according to the plan.
yes.
Going all the way across the access driveway to the windmill building,
Yes.
right? And, you know, it's
You want
either,
one of those taken out?
it's either an access drive or it is a parking space. It
No,
can't be
we'll take-
both.
we'll-
Yeah,
as we
right.
talk,
So
we'll
that's-
take the space out.
And you take it out, I didn't count it in, when I did the zoning review, I didn't even count it.
Okay,
So it just needs to be taken out. And then, as far as the ramp to the rear of the building number 107, I think I mentioned, Janet, about the applicant's proposed alternative use for the site, for the building, which is a rental. A rental shop, we had gone back and forth on what kind of rental shop that would be. You know, industrial rental equipment sounds like heavy duty. We have made clear to Mr. Bertolami that it cannot be heavy equipment. It can be small stuff, you know, maybe a mini backhoe that somebody can use in their backyard, or that would be okay. It can be all sorts of hand tools and equipments and that kind of, that's fine. Anything that Taylor Rental would would offer you for rent, that can be fine too. So, and for some of those equipments, it does indeed, you know, some kind of door to get, gate, door, whatever, to get that stuff in and out makes sense. So, but yeah, I would definitely say that it should not be used for automobiles until such time, if and when, whatever, the litigation is resolved, one way or the other. So that's really, you know, and as far as DRB, going back to DRB, I'm not sure what parameters you would want to give the DRB for that, but, you know, that may be a conversation to be had. But I think that's an appropriate step to send it back for further review. But the board cannot give the DRB approval powers. That's the only caveat. So we're gonna have to figure out some parameters and what it is that, what their scope is.
Their focus has been, they've been pretty careful to focus on the exterior, the stuff that is
Right.
visible. And they were concerned about this windmill building. They just wanted the house to be kind of more consonant with the style-wise, instead of having all those sort of
Right. And that,
bric-a-brac all over. I think they thought it was the elevations, the architectural elevations that they saw were kind of fussy.
yeah, and
you
that
know.
may be perfectly okay to make some architectural stylistic
And
changes
then
to the
they,
building.
you know, they were concerned about, practically speaking, you know, like walkways and things like that, but, you know, they addressed that in their memo, and I think, you know, it's just they need to make clearer, if this cottage is actually going to be built, they need to just, you know, make clear, probably provide a little more detail about what they had in mind, because they didn't provide, you know, any kind of proposed design with their comments, so,
Right,
yeah.
right. I mean, that's
Okay.
pretty much all I had. I mean, the revised plan was much more usable for zoning review purposes, so.
Okay, so there is a permissible use, but it's not, I don't know how you describe it. I mean, we can't say Taylor rental type equipment, but not really heavy equipment. I don't know what.
Well, it's, I think we have a zoning category. I have the book here.
You gotta like a guy who carries his zoning book around.
I think we have a zoning category that says equipment rental,
Okay,
and that, you know,
Roland, I think it's equipment rental and leasing, 12/7/18? No?
well, it would start with 3.
Okay. Gone over too many
Don't
numbers
show
there.
off, Leo.
maybe you have some questions going back and forth, and I'll find the section, and I can cite it to you once I found it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, questions?
Well, one of mine's for you, Roland, sorry. So just a quick one. So for that kind of, I know you're looking it up, but for that kind of equipment rental, is it something that could potentially require a ramp? I mean, you mentioned a mini backhoe or whatever.
Yeah. If you have a mini Bobcat or a mini backhoe or some other heavy
Right.
piece of machinery that somebody wants to roll up on the back of their truck, you want to have something to, you can't lift it, So that's anything you can imagine that
Right.
you don't want to lift, including maybe a heavy snow blower. I mean, I have a snow blower
I don't wanna lift that, yeah.
that's supposed to be a compact thing, but I can't lift it. So,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then my other question was just sort of about how we would end up directing DRB or what that condition would be. I mean, I think we can say, condition on the applicant consulting with DRB on external features or what, I don't know the correct language there. But like Roland mentioned, we can't give them approval. So, I think it would be more of a recommendation. It can be a condition, but it's still sort of a recommendation. Because, I don't know that it's worth kind of continuing it and.
Well, I think that we probably, what they're advisory to us, so they could come up with a recommendation, and then they'd have to give it back to us, and then we could just say, fine. I think that, I don't want to just have applicants go to DRB and then have DRB spend their time advising, and then
Right.
have the applicant just blow them off. I think that you want, and I also don't want applicants to get, and DRB to get bogged down in discussions.
Right.
But DRB just did have some concerns about just the design. I mean, it wasn't complicated. They didn't have that many comments, but a lot of it had to do with that. And I just thought that it might be helpful if we're going to have something rather unusual in the middle of a commercial area, if it were as, sort of attractive as possible, because there are a lot of different buildings in that plaza. They're all very style-wise, very different, and so I think it would help to bring a little bit of harmony to the. But I think how have we done it? I mean, we've done it with other site plans. We've sometimes.
Usually the DRB has been involved before it
Right.
comes to us.
They've gotten involved,
So-
they've been reviewing and reviewing, and it doesn't come to us until they've finished reviewing.
Right,
and
just
come
like,
to us.
just like CONSCOM, just like all the other
Right.
boards.
So-
I guess my question is, the only change that would be the spiral staircase.
Well, no, I think they had comments about the design. I think it was beyond the spiral
They-
staircase,
they-
but my concern, I guess, is just that if we do send it back to them, then we're continuing this hearing, and with weather and stuff, who knows when DRB is going to be able to meet and, kind of deliberate on this, and then it come back to us. So it's just it would just delay it quite a bit more, and I don't know.
Well, it's not like he can break ground on anything with 3
Well,
feet of
that's
snow.
true, yeah,
So,
yeah.
we're all based the same way in New England, so.
I mean, we don't have to condition our approval on their coming up with a sort of an agreed-upon approach and then coming back to us. I mean, we just say that, you have to confer with the DRB. And obviously, I expect both sides to be reasonable.
Well, that's, I mean, I think that's fine. It just, it would be more of kind of a if there's no, nothing binding there. I mean, it's a condition that you confer with DRB, but there's nothing binding to say you have to do what DRB says. So, it leaves it a bit more up in the air.
Or
if
we could
approve it
tell them,
tonight.
tell them that they confer with DRB, and then they go talk to the planning director. I don't know. It just-
Yeah, but I mean, if we
Yeah.
approve it tonight, then we've approved it, so it's
so
just,
it's regardless of
it's
what the
essentially a suggested condition. I'm fine with that, but, I just want us to be aware that that's how we would be doing it. And I, in some ways, would rather do that than continue this and kind
No,
of
I
push it
don't,
off
I
for
don't want to
everybody.
continue it, and but my thought was that you just make a condition that they have to confer with DRB about the design, and okay, if that turns out not to work, and, basically they put up the original design, and then we'll have to figure out a different way to involve DRB in the project, but anyhow. Yeah, DRB, I don't think addressed the spiral staircase at all. I don't even, well, I think
Well,
it
it wasn't on
wasn't,
the
it wasn't
plan.
even in the proposal, so, yeah, it wasn't in the plan, so they wouldn't have reviewed it, so.
All right, about the spiral staircase, that was a building permit application. It didn't trigger any particular, site plan issues, so it was approved as part of that, a minor change. So now that was before the site plan application came here, or the site plan amendment application. We just think it should be shown for completeness. So the design review board doesn't see every building permit application. And the design review board does mention a number of things on the building. I have the memo here. It talks about landscaping, and, I don't think that should be part of that further review, but, it talks about how the structure is of contemporary style, but the window styles and sizes are more consistent with, are not consistent with the simple colonial style. So it goes into windows and how the backside of the building doesn't have any windows, and maybe there should be some windows added. Those kinds of things. The roof line, again, they have an issue with the roof line. I'm not a, so maybe there is, maybe there's some room to move on that. But I would recommend that if you send it back for further DRB review, to limit it to the exterior of the building. And maybe have a checkpoint opportunity for coming back to the Board of Selectmen if there is some.
Well, I guess my question would be, if you've got these inputs from DRB, why don't we have these inputs from DRB?
Well, I have this one, it's in your it's not
It's in
in
our
the,
packet.
It is?
I mean, it's old, they did the review in October 2014. This thing has been continued for a very long, long time. So
Oh, yes, I did see
It's been
this.
months since we talked about it.
this was dated from back in October last year or sometime around the fall, when this hearing was first opened.
Oops, all right.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I found this equipment rental thing reference, and it is actually part of a larger use definition under services, where it lists bunch of different things, anything from bank to barber shop, but it also lists equipment rental or leasing. And barring any further clear definition, you go to the generic idea of what that is, and that's whatever Taylor Rental does.
Well,
So,
but to that point, one of the concerns I have is that we have nothing stated in our bylaw or in our zoning that says you can't have equipment that's greater than 5,000 pounds or...
we drew the line for Mr. Bertolami on anything that is, that falls under the category of what's automobile-related or vehicle-related, anything that is vehicle service station, vehicle repair, vehicle body shop, and anything that is typically associated with any of those types of things would not be okay.
Right, but you understand what I'm saying in terms of, so therefore, if he's got a series of 20 yellow backloaders that are in there that he's renting, what prevents that unless there's something specific that says, that rental equipment can't exceed X number of pounds or X number of dimension, because we don't spell it out in zoning, so then it would have to be spelled out in the site plan special permit.
You can spell that out in a site plan special permit. I mean, you know, we have a vehicle sale rental category specifically defined, and that's for automobiles, trucks, boats, motorcycles, trailers, recreational farm equipment, similar motor vehicles. So that is clearly the larger category stuff. But yeah, you can spell that out in your site plan as much more specific
Yeah,
if
because
you'd
I mean,
like.
I don't want it to be construction equipment. You know, we don't
Right.
want to have bucket loaders and everything else. Only because he'll do damage to the building and he wants to use it as a museum.
Well, I would think
Well-
that structurally, there's a limit in how much you can put into the
Well-
building, and that the building
We
commission
went
would
through
know that, right?
we went through that
Yeah.
with Mr. Bertolami, and I think if you put a condition like that on the site plan, that would be consistent with what we had previously discussed. He gave us a list of all the equipment that would,
And Roland, we had talked about that. The automotive proponent is 14,000 pounds. We were talking about everything that would be under 10,000 pounds, as in a Bobcat, a mini steer loader.
I
a
don't
mini
remember
backhoe.
exactly talking weights, but I think 14,000 pounds, that gets pretty big.
No, 14 is in the automotive category. We were talking under 10, which puts you in the skid steer, mini loader, what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and we also,
So if the board wanted to cap it at 10,000 pounds or 8,000 pounds, that's about what a skid steer weighs.
and we also talked about nothing outside.
Nothing outside, yes.
Right.
We agreed that.
Okay.
We
No,
wanted
I just,
nothing outside for two reasons.
because this kind of is on the cusp of two and not specifically spelled out.
Yep.
My concern is that in the absence of specificity, that it will end up as something we don't necessarily want.
Yeah, no, I
So-
understand that. And so I'll make a note of it, and I'll draft something up for the decision, if that's agreeable
Okay.
to everybody
Well,
else.
oh, go ahead, Peter.
No, don't, I have a question, but.
No,
so-
go ahead and ask your question.
Well, I was just going to ask Mr. Bertolami, did you change your design at all based on the design review board's suggestions, or what was your feeling about that?
I was going to bring that up when everybody got done. Back when we designed that complex, we moved the 1873 Weatherby House when it was on 2A. We moved it all the way up to the back, and I have a picture of what Daniel Weatherby did. He had his home, he had a carriage house, which I duplicated, and he had a windmill. And approximately 2008 or 10, the power function went away in the village district. So we were looking at that thing for a long time, and we said, let's make something that's either Maine or Cape Cod. Now, what people don't understand, especially the design review board, is the Weatherby House, the carriage house, and the windmill are all blue. Those are after Daniel Weatherby. The rest of the buildings, Roland and I talked back in the day, give me some retail, I'll give you the car wash, and we just built conventional buildings for there. This cottage, or whatever you want to call it, many hours went into designing it to look like something out of Cape Cod or something out of Maine. So the design review board can say it doesn't match, it's not supposed to match. The concept on Weatherby Plaza is the Weatherby House, the carriage house, and the windmill, but we can't have a windmill anymore, so at least we made something out of it that will look pretty. And why are there no windows in the back? Because the carriage house is zoned building trade shop, there's a shop underneath, and apartments on top. We don't want apartments looking at apartments. The only way you can see that there's no windows in the back is drive up back and take a look. And since the Ellsworth Village Trail is not going through, and we don't want to get started on that, because that's our second piece in Superior, there'll be no one going out back to take a look. So, design review board is great, but this was designed for a reason. 3 different aspects of Weatherby Plaza, 1 and Weatherby Plaza 2. Now, when I was going to start, we took care of conservation, recorded a decision, we took care of engineering, it was in the file. Hey, you know, I make as many mistakes as anybody. It was in the file. Roland had 6, 8, 9 things. We got to equipment pounds. It's 14,000 in the automobile world. I'd like to have you set it at 8. I hope, quite honestly, I want to win what's going on, so I don't think I think that's useless conversation, even setting it at 8 if the plaintiff wins. So, but if you want a guideline, put a guideline of 8,000, because that's what a skid steer, or anything that Roland had mentioned, weighs in at. The ramp is necessary, the door is necessary, and we've started our build-out on the bottom and the top. So, that's the way Weatherby Plaza is made up. There's the new, there's the old, and the conversion. And that's why the cottage, or the windmill, or whatever, looks the way it does.
Okay?
And I'm not insulting the Design Review Board. I'm sure they're a great board. I've been in front of them before. But in this particular case, they're dead wrong.
Okay. Mr. Bartle?
As far as the weight limits on the equipment rental, I will take a look at what's available in information on the internet. There's plenty of US DOT standards and vehicle size classifications and all sorts of things. I would only point out that the 14,000 is the maximum limit here in the town
Sure.
for equipment sale, rental, leasing, and all that. So I wouldn't don't be surprised if my recommendation comes back with something less than 8,000, because 14,000, that's your 3,500 or 4,500 pickup truck. That's pretty big.
14,000 is between a 35 and a 45 with a decent dump
Because
body
we
on it.
changed that just a little while ago. We brought it to town meeting, planning board brought it to town meeting because there was a number of people that gave us input that, because the number was at 12,000 before, and it didn't allow technically didn't allow.
It wouldn't allow a 450 if it was 12,000.
Right, and so.
And I agree with that, and I'd be,
So it was raised to 14,000, and so it just seems to me that maybe 10,000 or 8,000 is still a little bit on the heavy side. It sounds like still a small pickup truck, so, to me. But I'll have to look up.
okay, and as long as it's reasonable, I'm fine with it.
I was thinking more of the Bobcats that you can stand up next to and,
Yeah.
that
But
size.
keep in mind, they have
that are not
attachments
bigger
with them
than-
and on them, and no, not the backhoes and not the
Right.
loaders that we have. It would be the backhoes that we have.
I don't know what backhoes you have, but, I'll.
We gave you
I'll look at
pictures,
something.
but that's okay.
All right, so if I might kind of do a quick summary here. There seems to be a difference of opinion as to what the DRB has come up with, and Mr. Bertolami. I'm not sure what the resolution is of that. I don't know what the age of the windmill is.
1999.
Okay, so it's not historically significant. It wasn't part of the building group like the house that got moved or
No, but it was a reproduction in that caliber, the house, the carriage house, and the windmill. And the carriage house and the windmill were a reproduction. The house was a restoration.
And the carriage house is where the detailing place is?
No, you're directly, totally on the other side.
Okay.
Probably closer to the apartments, Federal Investment Trust.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. I just want to make sure we're
Sure, absolutely.
talking about the same,
No, a
so-
lot of people get confused between the detail shop and our shop because they both have apartments and they both have bays.
Right.
So it's an easy mistake.
So I'm not sure how to resolve the DRB issue. The DRB makes recommendations to the board. It's up to the board to either accept, deny, interpret, whatever we want to do, because they are a recommendation board to this board. So I'm not sure how we want to handle that aspect of it. I've noted all of the other things that came up as issues that should be included in the finding, such as getting the spiral staircase on the plan, verifying the sign setback, pinning the bike rack down someplace, removing the parking space lines on the access driveway, and then the weight issue, and the Because if we're not discussing the ramp, if there's no issue with the ramp into the building, then there's no reason why we have to find it as a finding or anything like that. And then, so the last piece is DRB. What do we want to do with the DRB?
I'd also add, I
recommendations?
think, limiting it to the indoor storage of the vehicles.
Oh,
That
yes.
was mentioned
Yeah.
as well, just put that in there.
Okay,
But yeah.
yes.
Whatever you do with the DRB, I think this is a bigger issue that we have to bring up, because how we deal with advisory boards' feelings about things, it was always a frustration for years and years with TAC. We would send our comments in, and we would never have any indication if they were listened to and, or not, and whether they had to be or not. Obviously, they don't if they're an advisory board, and if it's the design review board. If it's an advisory board, it's the same issue, and I feel like we should just decide for this time how to deal with them, but I think that it's something that we need to really look at, the process that comments from those advisory boards go through.
Well, we have. I mean, like when we did the CVS and all of those. I mean, the DRB took their whack at it first, and then it came to us. In fact, that created a problem because the developer thought that when he was done with the DRB, everything was fine, and then he came to us and it wasn't fine anymore. So that's a potential problem. So we have to be careful of that. We're the deciding board, not the DRB. We can take their advice. We can agree or not agree with it. That's up to us. And much of what they recommend, just because of the nature of the beast, is subjective. It's not objective. So that will also always color the way they present. So we may not feel the same way. They may say, oh, you need to increase the parking, and we say, well, we don't want any more parking. So there would be a difference of opinion. We're the final say. They're their advisory board. It's always going to be that way. So, at least in the near future, unless you change it when you're chair. Anyway, yes, did you have something else? Or?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that in that way, the design review board commenting to the Board of Selectmen is in no way different than any of the staff members commenting to the Board of
CONSCOM or
Selectmen
anybody else, yeah.
for your consideration, and you make the decisions. So that's in the end what it is. And that's where, I don't know where you're thinking about going with this, but there is nothing in the statute that gives the design review board approval powers. They're not named as a special permit granting authority anyway, so.
I just don't want these boards to be wasting their time. I want to make
Yeah,
sure that they
I know.
really
No.
get listened to. Yeah, no, I know, but TAC often, it seemed to go out into the blue. I don't know where it was going, but when we look at site
But
plans.
I think many of the advisory boards feel like when they give advice, we're just supposed to follow their advice. And it's like anything else, we get input from them. The FinCom is an advisory board, so that they can tell us what they would like to see, but ultimately it's the decision of this board. I'm picking on the FinCom because Herman was falling asleep.
Mr. Chairman,
And I knew it once I did that.
I just have a question for Roland about our legal authority. I mean, can we order an applicant to follow the design review board guidelines, put 2 windows in the back of the house? I mean, we don't have control over design issues like that under the special permit, do we?
A lot of towns do it.
I feel like that's going to cost me a lot of money in Nina hours, if that's your response.
Leo's already suing us for something else. It'll just be a little bit more.
I mean, there are some discretionary standards for granting a special permit. It's in the best interest of the town, that kind
Right,
of stuff,
right,
so,
right,
okay.
right.
I don't know that 2 windows.
Broad
I don't know that's
authority.
true. Yeah.
Because otherwise, it wouldn't be coming before us. I mean, there is discretion. That's why we ended up with all of these types of plans, and it's not going to the planning board because they're not elective, and therefore they're arguably less accountable than we are. But, they're a little more experienced in dealing with this sort of thing than we are, so. But, I mean, my concern about the design review board is that they are professionals, and they do put in time, and it's something that Franny alluded to with advisory boards, they do often feel marginalized. and if you want to have them, then it'd be nice to, I think that we do, listen to feedback, certainly from departments, probably more so the departments than anybody else, because mostly they're talking on the basis of
We pay
legal.
them.
Well, no, it's not just that. I mean, it's also because of legal requirements, and just because that's the basis for a lot of their, the information they're providing. Same with town council. We listen to town council, not just because we pay town council, but because they presumably know better
But
than
there
we
have
do
been
what they're
times,
doing.
there have been times where we've said, no, we don't want to follow town council's recommendation, and we pay them for that recommendation. So it's not, it doesn't mean that we have to blindly accept.
I understand that.
We are the ultimate decider in this stuff,
I mean,
so.
I don't understand why this didn't go through the usual procedure anyway with the DRB. I think it's because it was sort of a scattered project. It wasn't like the CVS or something. It didn't get DRB early on. And it sort of ended up on our plate, and DRB was scrambling to review it, and they didn't get to look at it any earlier than we did. Although I get the impression that probably their efforts to talk with the applicant would have been largely unproductive, so, yeah.
Right, I mean, I think if we put in a condition about conferring with them, Leo's sort of made his position clear, so, you might go confer with them, but it doesn't sound like you're necessarily going to make a lot of changes, so I think the decision for us is if we make any of their recommendations conditions, or if we just say, go confer with them. I don't have a really strong opinion on this, to be honest. I mean, I appreciate the DRB's work, and, we often take their advice, and so I don't think it's going unheeded, but I don't know that for me it's a tipping issue that I feel like we need to make it conditional, so that's just one person.
Well, we can just suggest, we could say, go confer with the DRB, and nothing comes of it, fine. I mean, the thing that makes this difference is it's not a big, all-encompassing project where you're going to be looking at it. I mean, it's a site with a lot of different kinds of buildings, kind of cluttered. Sorry, Mr. Bertolami, but, this was just something, their way of trying to kind of have some continuity, but it's not ultimately, I think, going to make as much difference there as it would in some of our big commercial site plans where, buildings are much bigger and the impact visually is much more substantial, so.
Mike, can I?
Yeah, Leo.
I think in all fairness to the Design Review Board, if they knew more about the project, I think their decision or their, advice would be totally different. The carriage house sits roughly 18 feet in elevation over the cottage or windmill or whatever you want to call it. Take that vent behind, those shades behind Janet, and tilt them so people can't look in. If you're on an 18-foot elevation, you can see right through that building. That's why there's no windows in the back. The Design Review Board did not know that. The Design Review Board did not know that the windmill, the carriage house, and the Weatherby House are all one package because they're all one color. And they also did not know the theory or the method of deciding what to build there that would look great. I mean, it's, as you all said, there's many different buildings. There are two separate lots, and it's really kind of hard to keep it all the same, especially if you're dealing with 1873. So,
Well, one question I have is, I'm not sure why the DRB weighed in on this. Isn't this outside the parameters of what they're supposed to? It's not a multiple housing development, and it's not a business development. So I'm not sure why they would be,
Design Review Board, just all design?
no.
It's only-
They have specific
Well, we're working on the chart.
guidelines. And have been modifying it over the course of years, but I think it's 4 units of housing or greater, and I think, or commercial,
And
correct?
commercial site plans. and
Or site plan,
This is a site plan,
or site
isn't it?
plan.
Or site plan special
in
permits.
general, right. And
Okay,
That's what's
fine.
before you.
I'm asking, I'm not dictating, I'm just, that was why I brought up the question.
Mr.
so.
Chairman, may I make a a question and perhaps a suggestion to
Sure.
maybe help resolve this. I don't know, the DRB's comments came in before the, the first hearing was scheduled, but I don't know if the DRB actually, did they meet with you?
I don't know where the
Or
comments from the
did they?
DRB.
Well, they
came from.
reviewed the
I've never seen
plan.
them.
They reviewed the plan, obviously. Well, they're posted as part of the comments that came in early in October. But sometimes the DRB meets with an applicant on a design, and sometimes they don't. So I was
I
wondering if
never
they
did,
met
Roland,
with
if
you.
that's the answer you're looking
Okay,
for. No.
so maybe it could be a solution, rather than trying to weed this all out, is to ask or require the applicant to visit the DRB and consult with the DRB, and perhaps the DRB will be able to better understand what the thinking is that the applicant brought to this house, and the DRB may have some other ideas that might be more, and there can be maybe a meeting of the minds.
Is there anybody here from the DRB that can speak for them?
No.
No.
Well, I mean, we're all here to represent. If they're not here, shame on them.
Well, no, they
The
represented
engineering
here.
department is
Oh, okay.
also
See,
not
so-
here,
I didn't see that.
So therefore, if you want to go by
Okay.
that, then they have a whole list of things they want you
Okay,
to
I
do.
never saw it, so.
Not good.
What?
I mean, if you never saw it, that's the first step, in addition to meeting with them.
Well, I mean, it was part of the packet.
Like but TAC, I remember putting in comments about this specific place, about sidewalks
The
along.
addition.
And, yeah, when you were talking about that and looking at the sidewalk along the side of the access road and things like that, and as I was saying, we never.
Sidewalk.
That's what I mean, I don't think you ever
Don't-
necessarily saw a comment.
Franny, don't go there.
I won't
It's
go there.
under
I
litigation.
don't think we
Do
should
not
talk
discuss
about
it.
it.
I'm not talking about,
Sidewalk
no,
because,
no, I'm talking about down at the bottom, at the access road. But my point is that you should be seeing these, absolutely. So I think
They
before-
were part of the packet for the October 20th original hearing, so it's not as though they weren't publicly available.
I mean, I think that when the DRB looked at they looked at the file, there were a lot of things that needed to be done, and then they reviewed what they had. They
At that
said
time.
The DRB thanks the proponent's team for sharing the project development drawings and would appreciate receiving the recommended updated information when available, which will help to clarify several questions the board has raised herein. They haven't had a chance, I mean, it's
Yeah,
been
perhaps a
going-
discussion.
continued for a long time. And
A
if you wanna- yeah.
one-on group discussion with you might answer a lot of the questions that they have.
Are we going to change the structure from what we designed it to?
No, if you strongly believe that what you've picked is correct, you can explain to them. It's just because I'm concerned about also the effort that they're putting into reviewing these things. It may be that because this was early on, and a lot has been submitted since then, that they would have a different perspective if they saw not only all the updating information, but they heard from you your explanation about why Cape Cod style or something.
If you
If
would
you
like
had a
me-
back and forth, okay?
If you would like me to call the design review board and meet with them at town hall and explain why there should not be windows in the back and why we designed it the way we did, I'd be more than happy to. But
Okay.
what I can't do, and I cannot answer any questions on that sidewalk. It's in litigation. I have to defer.
No,
I wasn't, I was
Mr.
talking about
Bertolami,
something down below.
forget about the sidewalk. We're
4 years
talking,
Well,
we're
Janet, it
talking,
was brought up and it's in litigation, please.
Well,
No,
Well, no, just-
I'm not referring to the same thing. I'm referring to something down, much lower when we were talking about, just about 5 years ago, and we put it in, the normal course of things. Not the same issue, not the same sidewalk.
You heard what Mike said. If it's a sidewalk, we're not going to talk about it.
But it sounds to me like everybody here is okay with putting in a condition that
That
the
you meet with
applicant confer with the DRB. My point is just, are we okay with that as opposed to not approving it tonight and saying you have to go
Make
back
that
to
a
the
condition that they have
DRB?
to come back and,
I mean, I'm fine not doing that because I don't want to approve it. The DRB is, we can't give them any approval authority and we cannot approve it and say you've got to go to the DRB, but if they have changes, recommended changes, then you're going to come back and this is not approved, that's not kosher with me. So either we're saying we're approving it with the condition that you confer with DRB, and if he makes changes or he doesn't, that's what it is, or we have to put in specific condition here or not approve it tonight. I mean, those are kind of the options.
no, what I was contemplating is we approve with the condition that he confer
Confer.
with them. You know, you have a nice conversation with them. If you feel strongly about your design, you just explain to them. Because we have, they've been an advisory board. I asked them, or they took it upon themselves to review this project because it's a site plan and that's where their authority lies. But I would like to respect their time and their efforts as well. And I think that they might be very interested to hear what you have to say about the project. It's rather unusual. So,
I'll be most happy to
and
call
also,
them.
it would help to de-demonize the DRB in your eyes, It just, I sense some hostility in your early comments, and I'm sure that wasn't your intention. So I think just have a conversation. They're very good.
DRB, so.
They're very good. They actually have really helped a number of commercial site plan proponents in making improvements, that we, the board, were very happy with. So don't discount the value of their advice. So, thank you.
So
Thank you.
it sounds to me like we're ready to approve.
Good, because
so
we're
I'll-
coming up
yeah.
on 8 o'clock,
So
so I
I'm-
want to move off of this.
I'm going to make a motion that we,
These are the details.
yeah, no, I've
if
got
you
them.
do- okay.
That will make a motion to approve the site plan special permit with the conditions stated below, that the plan shows a spiral staircase on the outside, that it shows the freestanding sign, and that sign meets the setback requirements, that the bike rack is moved to the correct place as delineated on the plan, that the parking is not lined in the access driveway, that the applicant confer with the design review board related to exterior design of the building, that this is limited only to indoor storage of vehicles, and that we limit the weight of the vehicles per the recommendation of the planning director.
Second?
All right. You got all that, Lisa. Yes, it complies with all my notes, too. Okay. All right, then we have a motion from Katie and a second from Janet. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, Leo.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Now, just one more thing. Now, since we went through this comprehensive site plan, I'm very happy that we did, because Roland and I figured out that we have 10 extra parking spaces, and we have room to build 11,250 more square feet on that lot
See?
of net floor area.
See that?
I'm
And
not
you
going to
thought
do it.
we were
But I
against you.
just thought I'd say that it came out in a comprehensive site plan. Thank you all.
Thank you, Leo.
Thanks.
All right. Good timing. That's the South Acton train station, that's, okay. Do we have the, oh yes, this is the pose, right? Yes. Okay, seeing that it's 8 o'clock, I'll read the legal notice. The Acton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on February 5th, 2015 at 8 p.m., postponed from February 2nd, 2015 and January 26th, 2015, in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room in Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, Mass., to discuss an alleged over-serving incident that occurred at Poe's Ribs and Barbecue, 344 Great Road, Acton, Mass., on December 7th, 2014. The documentation concerning the public hearing can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. And is,
Officer Rentschler is here to represent
Excellent.
the police department.
and is there somebody from Poe's, or? At least come up front so that if we have to call on you, because you have to use the microphone, so that the people in TV land know what you're saying. All right?
Good evening. Again, Detective Rentschler for the Acton Police Department. I'm representing the facts that occurred back on Sunday, December 7th of last year. At 7:56 p.m., the Acton PD, as well as the Acton Fire Department, were dispatched to the parking lot of the Acton Convenience Store located at number 469 Great Road. The nature of the report was for a pedestrian that was struck by an unknown motor vehicle. It was a hit-and-run accident. Several officers were dispatched to the area. Officer Joe Acom was one of them. He arrived shortly after the call. Upon his arrival, Officer Joe Acom found a party sitting on the bench outside of the Acton convenience store. Here, he'll be referred to as person number 2 in the reports that you received that were redacted. So person number 2 was found outside of the Acton convenience store. Officer Joe Acom observed the subject to be bleeding from his forehead, his arms, his wrist, and also complaining of leg and knee pain. As Officer Joe Acom further evaluated the subject, he also found him to be highly intoxicated and unable to give any account as to what happened to him other than he had been struck from behind by an unknown motor vehicle. There were 2 witnesses also at the scene. Well, they aided in the report of this pedestrian, but they weren't witnesses to any hit-and-run accident. They just happened to be bystanders who facilitated a call for EMS and police. The officer asked person number 2 while he was being treated by medical personnel where he was coming from, and he replied to the officer that he was coming from Poe's Barbecue. The officer then tried to ask him more questions. At that point in time, the subject refused to answer any further questions as to who he was with, what time he left Poe's, or anything else of that nature. The subject was eventually then transported, because of his injuries, to the Emerson Hospital. 11 minutes after that call was made on behalf of the subject, which was at the convenience store, Officer McCarthy, who was also looking up and down 2A for a potential hit-and-run vehicle, observed another subject walking along Great Road in the area of number 426. That subject was further observed by Officer McCarthy to fall and stumble over a rock wall as he was driving by in his patrol car. Due to this, Officer McCarthy returned to the area in which he fell, exited his patrol car, and found the party, person number 4 on your list, lying on his back, trying to regain his footing. Officer McCarthy assisted the subject to his feet. He noted a strong odor of alcohol on his breath, and further noted that he was still unsteady on his feet after he was standing up. Officer McCarthy asked the person where he was going, or where he was heading to, and the person replied to him that he was a short walk from his residence. Officer McCarthy asked him where his residence was. The party said he lived at 6 Vine Street in Leominster. Officer McCarthy asked the subject if he had in fact been drinking, and he replied to Officer McCarthy, "I'm drunk." Officer McCarthy then placed his subject into protective custody, and he later told Officer McCarthy or the other officers involved in the booking of him that he had been drinking at Poe's Barbecue. Essentially, those are the facts pertaining to these 2 individuals. The only caveat would be that I believe on December 9th, a request was made for the dinner receipt from Poe's, which the Board of Selectmen received, and it listed several drinks, beers, and some food items that was on the dinner check. And the only thing to note on the dinner check, it was closed out at 7:33 p.m., 23 minutes before we received the first call of the person that was struck by the motor vehicle at the Acton convenience store. That's essentially the synopsis of the situation.
Okay, one question is, I think if town council will correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have to swear in both the officer and any witnesses, correct?
Yes, that's right. I was trying to catch Lisa's.
Somebody remembered anyway, so.
You want to raise your right hand, officer? Do you solemnly swear swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth in this matter?
I do, sir.
And everything that he has told you is
And everything, you swear that everything you've already testified to is truthful?
As well as that, sir. Quick question?
Sure.
Thank you for this. You mentioned a receipt that had the alcohol and food. I don't think that was in our packet. Do you have a copy of that? I don't think we saw that.
I believe, I was led to believe it was emailed to you. I'm sorry.
I don't think,
No, not for this.
yeah, we have the redacted, but I don't think we got the receipt. Yeah, if we could just, oh.
I might have a copy myself. or not? Yeah. No, I don't think I have a copy. I don't have it, so.
My apologies.
I've seen it, but, yeah, and the notes that came in with it said that there were 2 drinks on there. One was a whiskey and one was a vodka drink, I believe, that they purchased for somebody else at the bar,
For 2 other patrons at the bar.
so.
And I was going to touch upon that, but I realized you didn't have it.
No, you'll get your chance. Don't worry, we're not going to leave you out of the process.
What are we going to do?
Oh, okay, well, have you already, you've taken a look at the
have.
receipt and stuff? Okay. I just want to make sure everyone got a chance to see it, so.
Okay.
And I did see this because I knew the comments, so I don't know how it didn't get in, but if anyone needs to refer to it, we'll have it up here. Yes, now, if you could go to the microphone, we have to swear you in as well, and then we'll hear what you have to say about this.
Raise your right hand, please.
Yeah.
Do you swear or affirm?
I swear,
You don't have to repeat after me, just answer yes or no.
yeah,
Do you swear or affirm that you'll tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter?
yes.
Okay. Please identify yourself.
My name is Fan Chen. I'm Acton resident too.
Can you please spell your name for the record?
First name Xiaofeng, last name Cheng. Yeah,
Good evening.
Hi, good
And
evening.
you are?
Xiao Fan
Do you
Chen.
manage it? Are you the wife of Mr.?
Yeah, I'm the wife, the owner. So
Okay.
most time I'm there, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, that night, I remember very clearly, around the 6 o'clock, that 2 young guy and 1 young girl came in. And I and another waitress, Cindy, greet them and let them sit in the bar and give them menu first. Yeah, later we ask, how we can help them. They said they wanted a beer. So as usual, my waitress asked for ID first. She checked their ID. They are all over age. So we take the order. They request the food first. Then later each one ask for beer. So we give them 3 beers. Then later, after we serve the food and the total is 4 beers, I think. And another girl wants another beer, we give them. And another 2 boys want the Mai Tai. So we make Mai Tai for them. Then later, they have another 2 customer on the side. They talking each other very happily, And then later they buy the 2 drinks for them. And after they chatting, talking, and I know that this girl and the middle boy is the boyfriend and the girlfriend. And the girl and with another boy is the sister and the brother relationship. So I know that. And later, after they done the food, the middle boy wants another Mai Tai. Then I saw it's loud, They chatting very loud. So I know it's not right, something wrong. So I told my waitress, I said, no, don't give to him. And my waitress came over and told them, and no more. Just gave him the receipt. After that, he's not happy. And later, and the girl go out first, sneeze out, and then his brother go out. Then I thought very weird, looks like they try to, hide something or try to escape. So there is our longtime customer there. He walked by me and said, Francis, another name, said, don't worry, I'll watch them. And then only the middle boy left there. And he just don't want to pay, And my waitress come over, Cindy, said, you don't need to pay my tips, but you have to pay the bill. For a little while, then the girl waiting outside, I think is wait a little longer. So she came back, and she took out the $20 cash, paid my waitress, and this boy take out the credit card or debit card, pay the bill. That almost 8 o'clock, I think. Then after that, they left. That's all, Then
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Questions for either the detective or for, yes, Katie?
Ms. Chang, how much did the young woman drink that night? Do you remember? I was trying to keep track of who had
I
what.
think one beer and one Mai Tai.
A beer and a Mai Tai?
Yeah.
Okay. And there were 3 Mai Tais on the receipt.
Yeah,
but
each
you-
one, they have, three, each one has one.
Okay, so between the 3 of them, they had 4 beers and 3 Mai Tais.
Yeah,
Okay, and that was over, but the woman only had a beer and a Mai Tai?
yeah. And the middle one has 2 beers and the 1 Mai Tai. And the 1 beer is, he didn't drink, he didn't finish.
Okay. And were any of them, in your opinion, showing signs of, you cut them off
Yeah.
by the last Mai Tai, but they weren't showing any signs of intoxication? in
No,
your
just
opinion, prior?
the middle boy, looks very exciting, very loud,
And did you know who had driven there, or which of the group was driving that night?
Oh, I don't know that.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have for now, thank you.
Yes, Janet?
Yeah, hi. I got a little confused. I was trying to take notes, and were there just 3 people together, or because I thought maybe you were talking about a second woman? And
No, 3.
Just 3?
One woman, 2.
One woman and
one
2
boy,
2
one girl, 2 boys.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about the woman, it's the same single woman. and
Right.
They consumed, except for, do you happen to remember which drinks on here were they bought a couple of drinks for somebody else?
Yeah,
Tanqueray and
the
the whiskey.
Tanqueray and the
Okay.
Crown
Okay.
Royal,
Okay.
yeah.
So they consumed everything else. All right, okay, thanks.
Yeah, which totals up to be 3 Mai Tais and 4 beers. Yeah. I'm sorry? Peter?
Were you familiar with these people before that night? Had you seen them in there before?
No. I know that I checked, I saw is, because I used to work at bank, there is the side of boy, seems, see him before, so I checked the ID, seems like the officer said he live in Leominster somewhere, but no.
Okay, because you said you knew that the woman was a girlfriend of one of the guys. Is that just the way they were acting that night, or you didn't know that? You didn't know them before this?
Oh, I don't know them.
Okay.
Yeah, just I saw the boy, very loud later, you sometimes people have more drinks, maybe they're exciting or hyper, so.
Okay. And just so, because of the fact that we passed this around, they had ordered also here in the food is a full rack of ribs platter, which included potatoes and baked beans, a fried calamari, and a half rack of poached ribs platter,
Yeah,
which also had mashed potatoes and broccoli. Were they splitting these up, or?
oh, yes, they're splitting.
Okay, so they
Yeah.
were sharing amongst the
Yeah, they're
three.
sharing, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Detective Rensler, have there been any over-service violations at Poe's Barbecue prior to this?
Personally, I'm not aware of any.
Okay.
And the chief was unavailable for tonight. He did have a recommendation based on the fact, at some point, we'll get to that, but I don't know if, when's a good time, but basically, due to the lack of activity that we've had, any kind of situations like this, I mean, the chief was looking just to put a letter in the file of warning, that basically to establish, if the board was to find there was an over-serving, that this would be a point of reference to say, yes, there was one on this date, and it starts here.
Okay. Thank you. Peter?
Have you had a chance to see these police reports at all? Have you read the police reports of what happened after they left your establishment?
Yeah,
Okay, because one of them was basically passed out beside the road. It looked like he had wandered into the street and then gone back off to the curb and tripped over a low fence and passed out, basically. So, I mean, how did that happen?
when they,
Before they left your place, your establishment was the last place they left. How did that happen, and what do you do to not let that happen again?
I mean, that there is for the people, you can tolerate a certain amount of alcohol in 1 hour, So we know that we usually couldn't give them more. So we just try to watch them more, especially for young kids. We will be careful that.
Yes. Janet?
Franny,
One of you
yeah,
girls.
one of you female, yeah. Hi, again, I had a question. I recall that your restaurant has just established itself in Acton, maybe in the past several years. When did you open for business?
Oh, before we have a ginger court, for 14 years, we have a liquor license. We have never have bad record, never have anything happen. This one we opened 5 years. This is first time.
Okay, and I know that since I've been on the board, Poe's in Acton hasn't been before us, so there probably haven't been any other incidents.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess everyone's asked the questions that I already wanted to ask, so I guess I'm not going to prolong it. Based on the fact that your husband had a liquor license at Ginger Court for many years without any issues, and the fact that this is the first time anything's come up with Poe's Barbecue in the 5 years you've been open, I am inclined to go with the recommendation of the chief to use this as a warning, but to Peter's point, I think you have to be very careful. This is, a serious subject.
Yeah.
And if you aren't aware, I mean, we're going to be hearing another case tonight on a revocation, and we're looking at 2 other facilities on Monday. So, I mean, it's something that we want to be very, very stringent upon, and we would rather have you err on the side of caution. I think you did a good job in terms of them spacing out drinks, including food. It's hard to tell what the absorption rate is for alcohol, but And apparently, from what I read in the report, the gentleman was a fairly large gentleman, so like 6'7", 220 pounds. So there's no way you would anticipate that a couple of drinks would have any effect on him. So I understand that. But I would entertain a motion to that effect.
Well, so first we have to decide whether or not this was an over-service
Okay,
violation.
yes, yep.
And, and again, I think the issue that's been coming up in a lot of these incidents is if people have been drinking prior to coming to an establishment. So it's more than just having the drinks there. Because if, he was 6'7" or whatever, having just that many drinks probably wouldn't leave him in the state that he was found
Right.
not long after. And so I think, it's really important to make sure that your servers and you understand that you can't go just based on what people have at your restaurant, but what's the state that they're coming into your restaurant? Do they smell like they've been drinking prior? Are their eyes glassy? Things like that. And I think that's an important message to send, based on the fact that that the officers found, I'm going to forget the numbers, I came up with fake names for them when I was reading it. No, who was the person who was,
Number 2 was the one that
was
lying
hit by
there.
the car, but person 4, I think, was the
4
one.
was the
4 was the other one.
Yeah,
who
so
they-
person
in
4,
protective custody.
right, was taken he didn't take a breathalyzer test,
No.
but he was taken into protective custody and seemed to be pass out drunk, Said he was right, admitted to an officer of the law that he was drunk. At
I don't
that
know.
point, you're usually a couple sheets
I don't know
to
if
the
he's
wind.
credible. There's a lot
Yeah,
of
well,
lying
right.
in this police record. I'm not even...
But so I guess my point there is, in my opinion, based on the state that the officer found him in, I think that it was an over-service violation. I appreciate that you cut them off. I'm a bit concerned that you didn't know who was driving. I think it's good to kind of establish that if there's a group of people, just so you can keep an eye as, if one person's getting really drunk, but person B is driving, at least you're assured of that.
Okay.
So anyway, so in my opinion, I think it was an over-service violation, but I agree that it's the first time and that the penalty should be what the chief recommended.
No, I would just say, in terms of over-service, I think you probably should think in terms of the statute. I mean, not the number of drinks that was served at the time they were there, but serving an obviously intoxicated person. To Katie's point that, they could be pretty drunk by the time they got there in the first place, in which case they shouldn't be served anything at all. So that's what I would look at, and I think, to my mind, based on these police reports that happened here, I do agree that, given that record, prior clean record, that I'll accept the chief's recommendation.
Yes, Janet?
Yeah, I think it's tough when you run a restaurant. Obviously, you're there to serve customers, and especially if a bunch of guys, especially a gigantic guy who's got a hearty appetite and a huge capacity for booze, comes in, it may be hard. You may think that they're already drunk, and they may be intimidating. You have to be prepared to just say no to them, and that can be tough. I mean, you did it in this instance with the one guy whose mouth looked funny, but there may be points earlier than that when you just have to say no, and your servers have to be willing to say no, and if as in the case of that one person, the customer is unhappy and starts to hassle you, call the police.
Okay.
Because it's your legal responsibility. But I know that sometimes some customers can, especially if they're a little drunk, can be pretty
Aggressive.
hostile and unpleasant.
Yeah.
And you can't please them by just continuing to serve them drinks. But no, I appreciate that your husband has had a very long, successful record with Ginger Court, and
Thank you.
that since you've been here in Acton, there haven't been any incidents, so.
Thank you.
One question I had for you, Ms. Chang. Are you and the staff tip certified? Have you taken the tips training courses? It's recommendations for service staff to recognize signs of drunkenness and how to deflate situations and...
Yeah, my waitress is.
Your
the-
waitress
yeah,
is, okay. Okay. All right, any other questions?
No, I'll make a motion.
Okay, make a motion.
So I move that this is we find it's a violation of the liquor license based
Overservice.
on a violation of serving a visibly intoxicated person.
The only concern I have with that is we don't have a blood alcohol level. We don't have any evidence whatsoever, other than the police
Well, it's not a
officer.
detective, yeah, or
Well, no, and I'm not minimizing that, but it's, it's something that, if we had a blood alcohol level for this gentleman, I'd feel differently about it. I'm not sure that I can say that he was overserved unless I know.
The word, if you're familiar with these things, is don't take the breathalyzer test, because you automatically lose your license if you do. And it's easier to win a case if you haven't. I'm very comfortable with a reasonable assumption that a guy who was wandering in traffic on Route 2A after leaving this establishment and passed out on the side of the road and told the police officer who picked him up that he was drunk, was intoxicated shortly before that when he was being served alcohol in this establishment.
Okay.
And the other thing, I mean, because we're not experts at this sort of thing, I mean, it's possible for somebody to have a blood alcohol level and not necessarily, I mean, it's not necessarily the one determining factor. It may be the legal standard, but there will be people whose blood alcohol may be very low, who are clearly inebriated because they have a very limited tolerance for alcohol.
So speaks the small woman.
No, well, there are Asians who, they can't consume alcohol because it just it's toxic for them. But I happen not to be one of those
Okay,
people. so.
excellent.
So anyways, I made a motion, I don't think it's been seconded.
And the motion has not been seconded. Do we have a second for the motion?
I'll second it.
All right, so we have Katie made the motion, Peter second. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Nay. Any abstentions? All right, so it carries 3-1 that it was an overservice violation.
Okay, and I'll make a motion, that Poe's Barbecue be given a warning and that a letter indicating that this was an over-service violation, that they were issued a warning, be put in their file at the police department.
Second?
We have Katie made the motion, Janet second. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Detective. All right. Next up is the Richards Property Recommendation for South Acton Train Station Advisory Committee. I see Mr. Satsak in the audience. You want to come up and speak to the report that the committee generated?
Yes, I'm David Martin. I live on High Street. I'm chair of SATSAC. We sent the selectmen a letter. I assume that letter is, you have that letter in your package. Basically, over the past few months, we've been discussing, Mr. Richards has attended most of our meetings and indicated that he might at some time in the future be ready to sell his land, and wants to have a good use for his land. And we've been exploring the possibilities as related to the train station, because we've gotten a lot of feedback again in recent months that there's, and for years, but in an increased level in the past few months, that parking around the train station is insufficient. And we've looked at the possibility in the Richards land and decided that it could easily accommodate a good-sized parking lot on the south side of the station, probably with more than 100 spaces. Also, the land could be used to improve the intersection of Stowe and Maple Streets, and also to increase the safety of the area. One of the concerns that we have if the south side gets used a lot is that people dropping off or picking up people at the station, waiting for spouses or whatever, that traffic could back up near the intersection with Main Street. And so this land could be used to have a pull-off, increasing that, the safety of the stopped cars on the side. There are also a couple of buildings on the property that have been recently, they're in very good shape, recently refurbished and built. So, what the town, if the town did acquire this land at some point, that's another decision as to what would happen with the buildings and what they could be used for.
Okay. Questions? Yes, Janet?
Do we have an appraisal yet of the property?
We have a contract with Foster Associates out of Fitchburg to do an appraisal on the property. They need to get out there and do some field work.
Okay. My concern about, I realize that parking is a real bear in that area. My concern is that even if we were to acquire the property, assuming the price is right, and we were to create parking there, that it might not solve the problem. That's my big concern. And to have a big, just another swath of asphalt, I was thinking it would, I don't know, I don't use the train there. If I were to use the commuter rail, I'd probably go to West Concord because it's more convenient, but I don't know what kind of nice commuter-friendly services there are. I don't know if there's a place for people to hang out and buy coffee and eat. And, I was thinking that it would be nice to have something there so people could pop in and get their coffee and whatever, if the price were right, it's something that the town might consider acquiring, but then the use would be subject to discussion. I'm just not right now convinced that parking is the best use for that property. I'm thinking about the neighbors.
Yeah, you're right, you don't use the station.
Yeah, I know, but it's just that, okay, we said
I
we
would
couldn't
say-
have the parking garage in that neighborhood, the neighbors didn't want it. And we had Littleton, we thought, oh, that's going to be the answer. It'll draw off a lot of traffic. And there's still a parking issue, and the trouble is then you have people driving around and parking illegally or parking in front of somebody's house where it's not illegal, but still, do you want a car parked in front of your house all day, even if it's okay? Things like that. So I need to be convinced that it's the best use. So, thanks.
Okay. Yes, Katie?
100 spaces wouldn't solve the problem. It would help alleviate some of the issues, but there will still be parking issues at the train station. Mr. Manager, have you guys thought at all about what the buildings there would be used for? Because that's part of my concern. I just feel like we buy properties sometimes that have buildings and think, well, we'll figure out what to do with the buildings later. But I prefer that we have some sort of plan for those before we get into purchasing them. Steve?
Mr. Manager.
Yeah, I talked to Mr. Richards. I think there's a bunch of options. I think he is somewhat, at least my takeaway from my conversation with him is, he likes the building, and, maybe there's a way we can have parking, yet he can still utilize the building. There's a variety of options, I guess, that we could consider. And, we haven't really, obviously, had much further discussion than that, but.
Okay, that's just one of my concerns moving forward. I think we've got to have a plan for using the building before purchasing anything. And then also, I'd like to see someplace for the shuttle to park and drop off. The shuttle, it doesn't just drop people off and go away. It waits there for a while, and it's got to wait there at night. And we've had a lot of issues with that at the current parking lot, despite the fact of there being a giant sign and writing on the ground and whatever, people still consistently park in the shuttle drop-off zone. So I just think on the plan, there should be a very specific area built in for the shuttle parking and drop-off.
Yeah, right now, there is going to be parking to the east of Mr. Richards' property anyway. I mean, that's a T piece of property that they took by eminent domain. I understand they're going to turn that over to the town, so the idea would be to have a drop-off point there, closer to the bridge, and that's the concern, that if people are pulling in there and dropping off, they're going to be backing up onto Main Street, which is going to cause serious problems. I think this plan could help alleviate some of that. There are other uses for the property that might be consistent with parking and other things that could be built there, housing on top of it or whatever. So, but I think we need a plan to move a little bit more aggressively with Mr. Richards and figure out what he wants to do and whether it's possible for the town to acquire the property. And I don't know if you think if one of us could meet with them, it would help, or what kind of plan we need to put together to get this.
I mean, I would like to get the appraisal first and have a look at it, then we could probably sit down with him. And I think, probably a member of the board along with me would be a good idea.
I mean, I'd be happy to do that if the board thinks that's appropriate. I'm the liaison to SATSAC, and I was the original chair of the SATSAC board, so I'm pretty familiar with the whole concept of the design and what's going on, and I've met Mr. Richards, so I'd be happy to do that. But
As part of the conversations that were going on when Mr. Richards was attending the SATSAC meetings, has he indicated that he's interested in selling the property to the town?
Well, he's inquired about it, and he's met with the town planner. He's been at all of our meetings, and I think, he's mentioned to me and to the committee that he'd like to find a good use for his land. So, I mean, he's definitely interested in exploring,
Options.
possibilities like this.
Okay.
I also have some possible answers to people's questions. I can just say, as far as Janet's comments, it's as to whether the need for parking. First of all, the parking that's there is about 268 spaces. It fills by 7 o'clock in the morning. And it's by far 20 to 1 the most frequently given comment to members of SATSAC is about the lack of parking at the station. Mm-hmm. And, and we talk a lot about the fact that we really don't want to see South Acton paved over. But options like this seem to be preferred to putting in a parking deck, for example. Katie, there is a pull-off in the MBTA entrance to the station that's being built. If we had other places for waiters to wait, that pull-off area, which is not very big, which is why we have some concern that it could actually back up the street all the way to Main Street, that pull-off could be dedicated to the van or to vans, and we force people to wait down in this area where that to be the case. And the area that Peter's referring to, what used to be the Montori land, which is next to Mr. Richards' property and was acquired as part of the building project. It may be that a parking lot can be built there as well. If that happens, that would probably be as part of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail project.
Assabet River Rail Trail.
Sorry, Assabet River Rail Trail project.
Because it's too far.
That's never happened before. But yes, as far for the rail trail project, SATSAC has also looked at proposals there, and we've made recommendations to the contractor designing that area, and we've also met with Roland on that as well.
Okay. I'd like to open it up to the public because I know there have been several people who have indicated that they'd like to speak to the subject. So if you could form a line up at the microphone, you got to speak into the microphone, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, all of your friends on TV here, just push Claire out of the way if she's in your way, Will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Claire Siska, 14 Stowe Street. I'm not here to make trouble. I just wanted to let you know that. Per my usual.
Oh, you're the one.
I'm here in support of the town purchasing the land. I think there are two different issues. I think one is whether or not the town should acquire the land because of the significance of the location. The second thing, as Ms. Adachi said, is what is the appropriate use of it? And I have mixed feelings about it, but just some sort of comments. It is a significant location. There's the rail trail, the Coet land, the train station. It abuts an historic district. I think it's a parcel that, just sort of casually surveying the neighborhood, people want to make sure that we have some input into what happens there. And the concern is that if it falls into the hand of a developer, that even though, you know, my vision was either just a couple little historic houses or maybe a little, you know, tiny shopping place where you could have a bike shop and a coffee shop and maybe some apartments. Apparently, developers don't like to do that. What they like to do is put in big, you know, squeeze in a lot of stuff. So if that's going to be what's going to happen, my sense of the neighborhood people that I've talked to is we would rather the town own the land and had some, you know, deep discussion about what is the best usage, including parking. Parking could be a kind of innocuous neighbor compared to some other things that might go there. I kind of wanted to point out two things about historical stuff. Not the garage, but the main building that Mr. Richard has restored is apparently pretty old building, according to Ann Forbes. It's been around for a long time. It was the first, I don't know, woodworking shop or something. She could give you more detail. So, you know, if there could be some use for that building and keep that, that would be nice. Okay, sorry, there's some other notes here. The thing is that this requires a town meeting vote of 2/3. And I suspect that if you take this to town meeting and the town meeting members see the proximity to the train station and you suggest some other use besides parking, you're probably going to have a riot on your hands. It's, you know, because people have been calling for this for a long time. So I respect that the committee.
We have police.
Yeah, okay. And then also, I also wanted, so my main really point is whatever's going to happen with this property, I just want to remind you that it is a neighborhood. There are little kids that get on school buses. We've, you know, in South Acton have, you know, partnered with the Board of Selectmen and the SATSAC for a long time in trying to make whatever happens there work for the neighborhood. And whatever you put in, we really, really need to put resources in place where we can take a serious look at what the traffic situation is going to be, sidewalks, pedestrian safety, light pollution, because, you know, there are people that are trying to go to sleep at night and put their kids to bed and put their kids on school buses. And Mr. Hanley actually is one of the SATSAC members, brought an interesting visual to one of the meetings where he identified, I think, 11, was it 11, Sean? 11, what's the word, unmanaged intersections within the square mile of, probably within a quarter mile of the train station. So it really needs to take a hard look at what's going to happen and how it's done so that it works with the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, I'm Will Tuffin, 23 Arlington Street. I've been a volunteer at the Acton Food Pantry for almost 10 years and a former director. And I'm speaking here tonight in part representing the food pantry. But yesterday I was with, I was going to say my friend, we're friends by now, Gordon, my friend Mr. Richards, when we noticed the agenda for tonight's meeting. And we're the food pantry and Mr. Richards are very far along on negotiations. We felt an obligation to inform the Board of Selectmen and Mr. Ledoux and the public earlier than we had anticipated that we expect the transaction to take place where the food pantry will be taking ownership of the property thanks to the generosity of Bob Moran. And Bob Moran wanted, knowing that the town of Acton has been very good to him, very good to his employees, very good to his family, very good to his businesses, and if this is consummated, he hoped it will be viewed as a gift to the town also. There are not 1,000 people come each week, but there are over 1,000 people who count on the food pantry. Most of them from Acton, but also from contiguous towns. At the present time, a framework of understanding exists among the parties. The food pantry, Mr. Richards, the owner of the property, and Mr. Moran. And not only would the food pantry be operating from the site, but Mr. Richards would still have the use of some portion of the property. In addition to that, there's a very important function there with an emergency vehicle. And we're going to continue to allow the emergency vehicle to have space on the property, so it won't just be the food pantry. If there's any question from that, I'm happy to answer them. Mr. Moran is in Florida now. He's coming back the 24th. He's firmly committed. The amount of money involved, I think, has been agreed to, with some other details that got to be worked out as usual, but we plan to sit down when he comes back and make further progress. We've been working for 8 months, and we're glad it was somewhat of a secret.
Any questions?
I'd be happy to answer any questions any of the directors or Mr. Ledoux has.
I just want to say thank you for, obviously bringing it to our attention probably earlier than you guys intended, and, that sort of helps us with our planning, our thinking, and I mean, I think it's, the food pantry is an important part of our community, and so having it there would I think be of benefit to the people in our town. So anyways, I just appreciate you bringing it to our attention perhaps earlier on so that we can
Okay. Thank you, Ms.
move
Green.
on with our lives, I guess.
Well, I think this kind of moved quickly because we have the impending annual town meeting, and any acquisition of property that we'd have to make would have to be approved by 2/3 of the annual town, or a town meeting. And so I think that the gas pedal went down on this because we've got annual town meeting coming up in April. So it was if we have to, if at the time Mr. Richards wanted to sell and he was willing to sell to the town, we needed to put together all of the details prior to town meeting so that we could bring it up then. That's the only reason it accelerated on our side. It was prompted by the memo from SATSAC. But if in fact if he is negotiating with Bob Moran and
the food pantry.
And the food pantry, I mean, that changes the tenor of this. I just don't know what, I just don't think that it's going to be something, unless he wants to sell part of the property, perhaps where parking would be, to the town and keep the building and use the building for the food pantry. I don't know. That's the whole point. It's.
If I may comment.
You may.
Thanksgiving week, 80, 90 cars parked for the food pantry.
Mm-hmm.
And on other weeks, it may be 60 or 70. They've now reduced the traffic needs, or the parking needs, by opening on both Wednesday and Thursday. And the clientele appreciate that because they have a choice of 2 days to go, but it has also cut down on the traffic. Someone might say, well, why not stay open 5, 6 days a week? You need 100 volunteers to run the food pantry. You just can't count on people being there on Saturdays or every day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
But it's operating on 2 days now, and that probably would continue.
Well, and I could see some benefit to it being on the rail line, too. I mean, you have some transportation, you have the Aspet River Rail Trail that will end up terminating there, so if you've got people coming from the Maynard end of town, they could get there on bicycle or some other vehicle. Well, no, in Europe, that's what they do, and have done for hundreds of years, so it's not as crazy as you might think. You youngsters. Back in the day. Yeah, exactly, exactly. But, so I don't know what the next step is. I think really what we need to find out is what Mr. Richards wants to do.
Right, I mean, I'm at the point where I'm thinking I should not have the appraiser do any work, because if this is going through, it's
Yeah,
kind of
I don't want to
wasted
spend money on an appraiser if he's not interested in selling. But in the same respect, if in fact he is interested in doing some sort of deal with the town to purchase and even maybe with funds from Mr. Moran, funds from the town, buy the site, dedicate the building portion for the food pantry, and take the rest of it as, there's a whole lot of things that could be done, but we have to have a dialogue, and so far, I think it's been kind of piecemeal, is what I'm getting from this, but.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we will keep you and Mr. Ledoux informed when anything significant happens. I'm sure I'll be back to you in 3 or 4 weeks to inform you.
I know where you live.
Right, nice place, isn't it?
All right.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, thank you so
Mr.
much,
Chairman.
Mr. Tobin.
Thank you, Board.
I'm Mr. Richards.
Son of a gun, don't you hate being talked about in the third person?
I came to find out more than to speak, and I've been talking to a variety of people. I am not sure exactly what my final intentions are going to be, but I do know that even though I've been there about 50 years, that the time is coming to an end. But I'm not committed to anybody at this point. I've talked to Jimmy Fenton, I've talked to Steve Steinberg, I've talked to the people down in West Concord that are developing West Concord, I've talked to the food pantry, and then it just became, I've been going to these meetings about parking because I've been told that it's an ideal spot for parking, which is pretty obvious. And after being there 50 years and seeing the people coming to try to get on the train, and they used my property with no problem. Now it's a problem because it's designed so that they can't use my property. I don't know, I'm just open to a lot of ideas. I think that it should be open for discussion, although I'm probably the last person to know about it.
Well, we appreciate you coming in, because obviously there's a lot of rumor and innuendo involved here, so I'm very glad that you came to at least clear that up, so.
I was actually the last person to learn that the MBTA was going to take my property, which, and I decided that maybe I'd better keep my eyes open this time a little bit.
Okay, well, thank you.
So can I just, you're saying that you would be willing to sit down with the town and talk about it?
I'm willing to sit down with anybody.
Okay.
So, Peter, looks like your offer still holds true. Yeah.
I'm not necessarily, I mean, like Mr. Ledoux said, there's a lot of different ways to approach it. I actually would like to keep working forever. But I know realistically, that's not going to happen, so maybe there's some kind of way to make a transition where all of a sudden, okay, get out, we're going to take over.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming out on a cold night. So, all right. Well, I don't think it's, I think if you want to engage Peter, it would make sense as to kind of throw our hat in the ring. It could be relative to a discussion like this or something else, depending on what you feel like any of the town's interest might be, but we might as well have a voice at the table. And since we're all looking at you, it looks like you win.
Fine.
He's a neighbor as well, so. But, so I appreciate your even open to the conversation, but I don't think it's going to be happening at this town meeting, so I would not move that portion forward. I think it's still in the decision phase, it's in the discussion phase, so you feel, do whatever you'd like to do with your property, it's your property, and work out the best deal for you. Don't listen to this guy. No, he's a good buddy of mine, so. All right, then I guess that's it. Thank you so much. Moving on, I guess. The next one up is the consider a stay of revocation pending Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission appeal for the Makaha.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Carolyn Conway. I'm the one who filed the petition for your consideration tonight. And I want to start off by thanking you for putting it on your agenda. We're here tonight to ask for a stay of the revocation order pending appeal to the ABCC, which is currently scheduled for the first week of May of this year. And I can tell you that I probably will ask, maybe if I can get it heard any sooner, I will. They have a cancellation list at the ABCC, so that you can, if somebody cancels, you can get yourself move forward. And I will ask, it's not a formal procedure, but I will ask to do that. But for the purposes of this evening, we're here to ask that the alcohol license be restored pending the appeal that is there. Now, there are two, and I'm going to address it as I would any court, there are considerations that we're putting forth for you. One is that the licensee in this case, who is now, the license is gone for 3 weeks, is suffering. And it's a hardship not only on the licensee, but it's on the employees. As of the date of my petition, we had lost 2 employees because of the volume of business that has gone down, and we're up to 4. We've lost two cooks, a waiter, and a bartender. We'd like to get those people back to work. And in the meantime, we know that things have to, that we have to be on at above standard in order to show that we're worthy of your discretion in this case. Now, I have pointed out in my petition, obviously, you have a full arsenal available to you with the police and the building department and all of that. But I know that there also has been some concern with respect to the videos and the surveillance system that's in there. What we've done with the surveillance system that was on the premises before went to a single hard drive. Once that hard drive hit its memory, it started to erase. So it erased the first recorded program first. We've now putting in a system so that, let me go back a little bit. The first hard drive started to erase after the expiration of 2 weeks. Is that we've gotten a second hard drive where all of our tapes are not going to be erased. They're going to be downloaded to the hard drive, and we will not erase them until we notify you when we have, at least until May, we're going to keep, nothing will be erased on it. So we will basically have the system that's in place now, plus a backup. The system that is in place now has it's over 500 megabytes. We're looking at gigabytes so that we can make sure that we have everything and anything for you. Also, we've put in a system too, and I think it answers your question earlier about really how better can you maintain knowing whether somebody's getting too much alcohol. it's a two-step process. One is, and it works very, very well, is that you have employee meetings all the time, like at least once a week, where the employees it's reiterated to them what the standards are, and that the fact that if they don't keep up with this is that they're going to lose their jobs, and they've seen it, that it's actually happened. The second is, and it's a level above tips training, and it's teaching your employees how to engage in conversation with the clientele that's there, so that they can better tell answers to questions, things like that, whether people are having too much alcohol. If the only interaction that a waiter or waitress has with a clientele is, do you want another drink, they're not getting a full picture. But if the waiter or waitress is trained to ask certain questions, things like that, including who's driving, all of that, then that waiter or waitress is going to be better trained, and they're going to be able to tell whether speech is slurred, whether give somebody, look and make sure that people can pick up change. There are all kinds of tells that can be trained into a server that we're going to undertake. So my basic argument is while we go back, that this place is hurting, and we don't want it to go out of business, obviously. It's having a very tough time paying its bills, but during that period of time, to the ABCC appeal, maybe we can work something out in the interim, is that the licensee in this case is going to make sure that, again, it's operating at above standard. We're going to make sure, I'm doing it myself, that we have now a written employee manual, so that the employees have all of these suggestions as to what to do in there, so that they can see it. We're going to put in an employee manual that the employee has to sign, that they've read the employee manual, and if they are found to have not complied with that they agree that they will be fired. And we're working on that. We'll have the employee manual is basically done in my computer. It will be out. And as I said, the training is not that difficult. It's more or less just having a second level of awareness. So we pledge to you that, again, the video will be available, that the extra training will go in. We remain subject, obviously, to all of the rules and regulations, not only of this board, but the ABCC, and we'd like the opportunity to get the license back and operate so that we can have, a thriving business again. The owner is with me this evening, and we're available to answer any questions that we may have. And as I said, I can keep council informed as to whether anything's going to get moved up at the ABCC. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But that we will be continuing to operate. My practice is before the ABCC for the most part, and I can represent to you that it's not that unusual for a town to grant a stay. As a matter of fact, Boston automatically does it pending, and it is so that we can get, we're not behind the 8 ball going forward. I will suggest to you that we believe that we have meritorious defenses to go before the ABCC, and that hopefully we'll be back, and you'll have, at least with this owner, a business that's operated for over 19 years and has been in the area for several decades.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Conway? I'm sorry? Questions? Do we have to swear you in?
Not tonight, thankfully. Mr. Chairman, I just want to address one issue, and that's the question as to whether the board has the authority to stay their revocation of the liquor license in this case. At the hearing where the board voted to revoke the liquor license, a question was raised as to whether the statute stays the revocation pending appeal. The General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 67, does say, pending a decision on appeal, the action of the local licensing authority shall have the same force and effect as if the appeal had not been taken. Since that time at the license holder's request, we have looked into whether the board has the authority to stay its own decision. After talking with the executive director of the ABCC and doing some case law research, town council's office is satisfied that you do have the ability as the adjudicatory body to stay your own decision. That is not meant to say that you have to stay your own decision, but it is within your discretion, and based on the research we've done, it is a fairly common practice as council represents.
Okay, thank you, Nina. Do you have any questions for either Nina or Ms. Conway?
I think what I'm hearing from Ms. Conway is exactly what I would have hoped to hear from the owner when we had this hearing, a few weeks ago. I was reluctant to take this move. I'm fully aware of how hard it is on his business. I didn't feel like I had any choice given what I was hearing and the activities that I knew were going on there. This shows that he's going to be taking some positive steps. I think he should have talked to Ms. Conway much earlier. She's given him the right advice. But he's going to be taking positive steps to really address the training issue with the employees, having regular meetings with employees, having an employee handbook. All of those are exactly the right move. So I'm inclined to agree to a stay. Let me just ask Nina, this is a brand-new hearing. It's not based on anything we did or said. It's all over again. They hear the issue about whether it's appropriate to rescind this license or...
To be clear, you're talking about the ABCC appeal.
Hearing,
yes.
Yeah.
It's a de novo hearing, which means they place, essentially, they make a whole new set of findings of fact based on evidence presented from witnesses, probably much of the same evidence you heard, but not necessarily, and they may place different value than you did on the evidence that they hear.
Okay, so you'll be bringing the Acton police officers in there rather
Correct.
than, none of us will have to go testify.
Correct.
So, and if they decide to lessen the penalty somehow, you can certainly make recommendations about these kind of conditions, or maybe the owner would offer to add these kind of conditions as an appropriate way of dealing with the problem if they agree to reduce the penalty somehow.
I would advocate for as much. It certainly is within the ABCC's discretion as to whether they accept my recommendations or not.
Okay.
Just one more thing. By doing these steps...
You have to use the microphone.
By doing these steps, we're also making the insurance company very happy. So that there's business-wise and all of that, there's not only to keep you the license, but it is something that we're very willing to go forward with because that's what the insurance company wants in place as well. So that's an added extra bonus for this.
Well, obviously, if there's a serious injury from any of these incidents, the owner of the business is not going to have a business anymore because they can get sued for, serving too much alcohol to people that results in a serious injury. So, thanks very much.
Katie?
Before I continue, I just want to state for everybody here tonight that we are only discussing the stay of the revocation, that we're not discussing the decision that we made, and nor can we, because it wasn't posted for that, so just for everybody present. And I agree with Peter. I think that the licensee, with Ms. Conway's guidance, is taking the right steps, and that I do think that it's appropriate to stay this pending sort of the ABCC's final decision on what the penalty should be for the violation, because if we don't stay it, I don't think that the licensee can stay in business if the hearing date is kept until May 6th. So, I don't want to be unjust, and so it seems to me that it's the right move to stay the decision.
Janet?
Well, as one of the two dissenting votes on the revocation, I completely agree with the proposal to stay the revocation. I am very encouraged, as Peter said, by Ms. Conway's guidance to her client and all the things she's proposing. I don't want to ask you what you think of your client's operation before you got involved, but because that's probably not something you want to share with us. But I one of my concerns about revocation is I thought it was, as I said, draconian, and for a business that has been in operation under the current management for 19 years. And while it has been before this board in different iterations for issues relating to alcohol, it's not as if it's, every day, every week, every month, every year even. And it's just, there's been the spell in the period in the last year when we were getting some issues. So I completely agree with the proposal to stay, but I have a question for council about, okay, if we stay, do we just issue a stay, or do we issue an order that stays the revocation and also maybe establishes the conditions that Ms. Conway has already sort of listed as the things that her client is seeking to do?
Yes, you would vote whether or not you want to stay your decision, and you can certainly impose conditions on those. I would encourage you to make it somewhat specific. Your stay will be in place as of a certain date, and the liquor license, I assume, was turned in and would be returned. And then, as I said, you can certainly list the conditions of this stay in that, and I assume they have no objections to those conditions.
As a matter of fact, what I can do is I can, if you want, we will make sure that the videotape stays, it is not erased up until that we will establish an employee handbook and employee meetings, and that's acceptable to the licensee.
I think it might be useful as part of that for us to, sometimes we ask applicants for copies of, say, their policies, handbook. If there's anything that's germane to the whole issue of the liquor license.
More than happy
Okay.
to give it, I'm more than happy to file with the board a copy of the employee manual. It's an employee manual that I've used for many, many years, and it's also been approved by various licensing authorities, so I'm happy to give it to you, even if you want to give it to people to use. It's something that's worked over the years, so it's...
An open source document.
So I'm happy
Yeah,
to...
lifting from other sources is always encouraged, right?
I can email it to council in the morning. It just,
And then
it takes a little, it just really, it's not, the things that I'm talking about, being able to talk, all of that is there. And also, it does cover incidents when the waitstaff believes that somebody may be showing signs of intoxication, and it does call for identifying the driver, making sure that, everybody is either, they either call the police or they keep the people there. But it covers all of that. It's a pretty good document, and it's in very plain English. So it's, it's not a lot of legalese. So I'm happy to do it.
Great, okay, thank you.
I guess some questions I've got is, now you've tentatively got a May 6th date, hearing date right now. For our council, is there a limited time, meaning what's to prevent this stay from being rescheduled and rescheduled and rescheduled and rescheduled at the ABCC so that this stay lasts for indefinite time?
Well, it's already set for a May 6th date. I believe that there is an outside date. The decision needs to be rendered within 30 days of the hearing date. So I haven't heard of a practice whereby someone continually extends the time for the hearing in order to prolong their stay. There's nothing that I have heard from council that makes me think that this license holder, their counsel would do that. Typically, in order to get an extension or a hearing date moved, they would need consent from our office.
A health issue or something
We would do
like
it once, as professional courtesy, that's not a serious concern for me at this point, and I think that we can control that if that arises.
Okay, thank you. Did you start to?
Well, I was just saying, the ABCC also has a computer tracking now,
Mm-hmm.
so that if cases go on too long, there are all kinds of bells and whistles that go off in their computer system.
Okay.
And it goes up.
The other question, and this is, because it's been such an issue over the last 3 times that Raymond's been in front of us, is this video recording. We have never seen anything. This was supposedly put in place back in 2006. As far as we know, it's there, but we have no proof of that.
I have in my file a letter that I've got from the
technician that he
technician
hired.
guy, because I wanted to know exactly what kind of system that he had. He is now currently out of the country because I was going to bring him with me tonight. But I can give you the specifics of it once I get them from him. As I said, but now we have to put in that backup server, or that backup hard drive, if you will. And so that I know that it's getting taken off the current and being put on the permanent. So I can certify that, as soon as I can. It's the expense in these systems is not the actual recording, it's downloading and all of that. So if you want something specific, I'm happy to give it to you. It's just that that's just the way these things work. But I can, what I can do is, I won't be able to do it by tomorrow, but if you want part of it, is usually what I do is I take a floor plan and I put on the floor plan where the cameras are so that you can see what directions the cameras are going in, and so that you have an idea what parts of the, where the cameras are looking, so that you can see that. That's usually the best way that I can show somebody, rather than bringing the actual mechanical device in, is this is how we're doing it.
I don't even necessarily want to, I know you misunderstood.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not looking for you to bring the device in and show us. I want to see evidence of a result, meaning this is a video camera. This video camera takes videos. So therefore, you should be able to supply us with a video by tomorrow. If this was an overserved hearing right now, we would request that, and so you would have to produce that. I'm still not sure that, that can be done. I've seen no evidence of that.
Okay.
And I don't mean you have to have it by tomorrow.
No,
I'm just using this as an example.
Why don't council and I speak, and I'll do anything that needs to be done to satisfy that, that we're meeting all the representations that I'm making to you tonight.
Okay.
I'll move.
I think there might have been an audience. It seemed to me like there might be.
Sure, okay. If there's audience members that would like to speak to this?
My name is Anthony Cardullo, 131 Main Street, and thanks for having me.
Sure.
The earlier case of the PO that reflects on this case, we have, Chairman, you were the only one who got it right, the blood alcohol level. Outside of that, how do we know they were overserved or where? We have evidence suggesting that they had 2 drinks, well within legal limits, but it was assumed by counsel that this was some kind of overserving. This kind of reaction to this case is not necessarily appropriate. This has happened to Ray 3 times now. Something's changed. There's over-enforcement of these service laws at this time. At the ground level, police are doing their job. They're professional, effective in their duties. I was there for one of these incidences. I have nothing negative to say about the Acton Police Department at the ground level. However, at the executive level, something is wrong. Why are this man, 19 years in business now, having his feet to the fire? He's run a successful and safe operation that is in the business of serving food and alcohol. Why now? What's changed? I don't know. Is it driven by other forces? I don't know. All I can do is assume. For the last 2 weeks, Ray's been out of business. He's losing people. It hurts the community. It hurts the people who he employs. It essentially hurts the town of Acton. The Maka-Hai is a fixture in this town. We need to look at our review procedures when the police are bringing cases like this to this council. Why? It was handled. Janet, the police were called all 3 times, all 3 incidences. Your suggestion to the Poe family, they handled procedure. Mr. Tedinello will tell you all TIPS protocol was followed in each of these incidences, every single one. There was no misdoing by the Maka-Hai. Sooner or later, we have to look at the individual's responsibility to themselves to ensure safety in a public place. If you're going to walk into a bar half in the wrap, you're going to hold your back straight and keep your eyes level so you get served. You're not going to walk in sloppy because that's going to give you away. So a bartender gives a drink. Observantly, Ray and Kenny, both experienced service professionals. In the second case, Kenny removed drinks from the bar, refused to serve the man another drink because he came in intoxicated. Gave no indication of it. As soon as Ray picked up on it, that was game over. And yet, this council still moved. Janet, thank you for your abstention from that suggestion of revocation. Still moved to suspend this license. It's an injustice. It's not right. We need to look at ourselves here, folks. That's all I got.
Thank you for your input.
Hi, my name's Bob Sundberg. I've been an active resident for about 40 years. I'd just like to address the tips thing real quick. I'm a state trooper. I've been a trooper for 13 years over the Concord Barracks. It's basically an inexact science. These people do the best they can. These restaurants know they're on the hook. They know they're the ones, if anything happens, it's financial suicide, they're done, okay? I mean, in my own personal experience, you just can't tell with certain people. Some people are professionals. They can drink and hold their liquor a lot more. I've talked to someone in the barracks, 2.5. He was talking just like this, like me and you. Other times I see someone just over the limit, and they're a mess. You just really can't tell. As far as these businesses go, they're not going to serve anybody that is, out of control. It's suicide, like I said. On a personal level, I've known Ray a long time. He's a good businessman. They run a good business over there. My family's had a business in town for about 48 years now. I've been going to Maka as long as I can remember, and I'd like to keep going. Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Hi, my name is Debbie Livernois. I actually don't live in Acton, but I manage a large property in Acton. I've been going to Maka for a long time, mostly at lunch, sometimes an evening for dinner, but quite often we have lunch meetings at the Maka. It's been a staple here. I've worked in Acton for like 8 years now, managing this property. It's been a staple here for 40-something years, I believe. And we enjoy going there and just can't imagine the town without it. I've gotten to know Ray since I've been going there. I think he's very conscientious. He cares about the town of Acton. He cares about his business. And I think he has worked very hard and tried to really implement everything that you've asked of him and suggested. And I know he takes this very serious. And I too would take, over-serving very serious. I have also been a bartender many, many years ago. We won't say how many years ago, but I too do know it is quite often very hard to tell if somebody is intoxicated or not. There's a lot of people that just, look perfectly fine, act perfectly fine, can talk, hold a conversation, normally just like they would without drinking or if they've had 4, 5, 6 drinks. I have seen Ray actually cut people off as soon as they start to seem like they might be having a little too much, after a couple of drinks. And I think he is very conscientious in his business, and it's unfortunate it has come to this. And I just want to thank you for considering to stay the revocation until the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Good evening. My name is Tim Reardon. I'm a Concord resident. I've been in this community since 1972. I've been going to the Maka for a long time. I've built a friendship with Ray. I am the former manager of the now closed Concord Elks. I was the liquor license holder. Ray and I have talked many times about business and such. Seeing Ray with how he operates, how he does his business, he does a great job. He really does. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there a particular time of night, but as a general practice, being observant of these things, I am tip certified. I've seen how the employees act. I see how the employees talk to the Raymond or talk to Kenny. They are professional. And it is, like this gentleman said, you know, somebody's got to take responsibility. And the thing that I heard early tonight, just on a separate note, this Poe family, I heard something that was really bothering me. You assume the guy that fell down was drunk. Nobody asked him, and I applaud you for asking for a blood alcohol count. We all have medications. Nobody asked if he had taken a medication. It says, you know, don't drink and with this medication. Did this guy have that? So he wasn't overserved. He may have had one bit of alcohol, one drink, two drinks, and that mixture could have made him unsteady, delusional. You hear people on Ambien or other mixing of cocktails or drugs, you know, that affect him. So I don't know what they did wrong, and I wasn't there, but that fact got missed. They got a smudge on their name now. They should have had representation. I don't think she fully understood. I don't think Ray's, by not having counsel here, was to say he was defiant. I don't think it was here. He's just a regular guy. You know, and some people, this attorney that he's hired is much more eloquent than he is, obviously, or me. He works his butt off. You know, and the thing that is also missing is when you lose a business, it severely impacts your community. Now, being a member of the Concord Elks for 30 years, that we'd have no more, we closed because we were embezzled and forced close. We have no more senior dinners. We used to get support from the Makaha at that, you know. Ray, I would call him up and he would be there. You take a guy like this out of the community, you're not just hurting him, you're hurting your community. I applaud you for reconsidering, you know, and giving this guy a chance because he definitely deserves this. Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Hi, Mary Grace Yao from Littleton. I started waitressing 37 years ago from a co-owner of the Makaha in Littleton. I've been bartending over 28 years. I am tip certified. I was also team certified in New Hampshire, total education, alcohol management. What really bothers me is the previous, not revocation, but license issue you had. Like this gentleman just said, you know, people are on medications. They're using recreational medications as well, self-medicating in a car. They're coming back from work. Oh, here, let's pop a couple pills, we'll have a couple drinks, and we'll have a good night. I think if you want to see what's going on out there, maybe put your cameras in the parking lot. No, it's not a laughing issue, it's sad, because you, as a conscientious bartender, are doing your job, everything by the book. Tips tells you, if you see someone who has gotten out of control, you call them a cab. Make sure they don't get behind the wheel. He did that. The patron refused the cab ride. The police came. They said, you did the right thing. Well, good for you, Ray. I applaud you. But what happened beyond that? You know, I just don't get it. You told this woman, just call the police and have them take care of it next time. That's what Ray did. And his license was revoked. What kind of message are you sending out there, having done this to the Makaha, who's been in this town over 30 years, not under Ray's management the whole time, actually 40 years, but what kind of message are you sending out to them? Do you think they're going to want to call the police? The police will be fine with it. They'll do their job, do an outstanding job. It'll come before you folks, unfortunately, and get their license revoked? No, they're going to let the guy go home on his own, maybe kill a few people on the way or himself. To me, it's sending the wrong message, and I do thank you for staying your revocation. Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
My name's John Ainella. I've been an Acton resident for 12 years. I am tip certified. I bartended for 6 years. The one before pretty much summed up everything I was going to say. As a tip certified bartender, the best you can do is, as soon as, it's hard when someone walks into a bar, you don't know what they've been drinking. You can keep an eye on them, but your best thing you can do is, as soon as you realize that they're intoxicated, or so signs of intoxication, you take the drink away, you offer them transportation, offer them a glass of water. If they refuse, you call the police. Raymond did everything that you're supposed to do on the tip certification, to the T. And what happens? He calls the police. Janet over here is told, pose, next time call the police. They're going to call the police. Why? You get your license revoked if you do. I mean, it's just, it's so mind-boggling to me that you do something completely right and you get penalized for it. And unfortunately, there are families that are working, that their families are suffering for it. And like I said, that's really all I have to say. And thank you for at least granting them that stay.
Thank you for your input.
Zapped. Hi, my name's Mark Segrist. I've been a resident of Acton for 10 years and a customer of Makaha for those 10 years. I'm also a franchisee of World Tavern Entertainment, which provides poker and trivia to bars and restaurants. And Raymond was my first customer in 2010 when I started that, and we've had the free World Tavern Poker League there every Monday night since then, which has been on hold since he lost his liquor license because people without the drinks don't buy enough money to support that. But I'm also here not as just the person that runs the league, but as a loyal customer. And I'm also a certified tips bartender. I'm an engineer and land surveyor by trade, jack of many trades, including the poker league. And I got my certification back in 2011 and 2012. And right in the tips manual, in their summary, it says reasonable efforts. The law requires, as a server, you make reasonable effort to prevent intoxication in guests, prevent alcohol sales to minors, and intervene if a guest does become visibly intoxicated. This can include calling the police if necessary. Some examples of reasonable efforts include offering food, providing alternate transportation, cutting off a guest, calling the police, enlisting help from the guest's friends, all of which Raymond did. I wasn't here for your last hearing, but I did read the minutes in the Acton patch and on the Acton forum. And I mean, I think it sets a bad example if he followed all of the reasonable efforts in the tips manual and he gets penalized for it. I mean, it's the patron that's actually ultimately responsible. And yes, he does have a duty too to watch his guests. And as a concerned citizen, I have a question for the board. Do you have a copy of the tips manual?
No, we do not. You have to pay for a copy of the tips manual.
Would you like one?
We don't want to use your tax dollars to buy that.
Would you like, they're $10 on Amazon.com, and I will donate one. Or I will donate 4.
No, I'll tell you, I'd be happy to take one as a donation. The young lady who left is very interested because she's a non-drinker. So she has no concept whatsoever, and it's hard for her to weigh in on these. So I'll take you up on your offer, and you can give it to
Okay,
Francis.
this is the one that I used when I took the course, so it's got all kinds of markings in it, but I will order one on Amazon. Hey, I would rather have an informed board than speculating. I mean, I saw in the minutes that you know, 4 drinks in an hour or in 2 hours you think is evidence of, you know, intoxication, which it's not. I mean, there are guidelines in here, and it depends on the person's height. I mean, somebody my size can obviously drink, you know, a lot more before they start feeling it, and the blood alcohol goes up, and medication affects it, all kinds of things. But I will provide you with an unmarked up copy of tips, just so we can have an informed board.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say, I didn't make my decision. I think he's referring to the previous case there. I didn't make my decision on the tips guidelines. I made my decision on the fact the police determined he was intoxicated when they arrived on the scene, and the individual had a blood alcohol level of more than double the legal driving limit 2 hours after he was arrested. So that was the reason I made the decision back then.
Yeah, and I don't want to badmouth the Acton Forum, but don't use that as your source of info. I love Alan like a brother, but I'm not going to...
I'd like to, is it okay?
Yes.
Hi, Dave Stenstrom. I'm actually from Brookline, New Hampshire. And I've known Ray for a long time. Our whole family has. And probably 30, 40 years. I grew up in Littleton, Mass. Moved to Brookline, New Hampshire. And at least twice a month, my wife and I make the trip out to Makaha still, you know. And I just wanted to say also that every year, the whole family gets together at Christmas at the Makaha. There's 30, 40 of us. My mom, my sisters, brothers, grandchildren, we all go there and have dinner. And we've been doing this every Christmas for the last 15 years, you know. And I just don't know, you know, if this place goes away, where we're gonna go, you know. It's a great place, you know. It really is. Thanks for everything.
Thank you for your input. Okay. Is somebody willing to make a motion relative to this stay?
Yeah, I'll move that we immediately stay the revocation of Makaha's license on the condition that the owner provide the enhanced training to employees and employee meetings that his counsel has referenced, and provide us with a copy of the employee handbook as soon as it's available, and maintain the tapes until the hearing on this matter at the ABCC. I guess we were, whatever information we could get about the equipment that's available to provide videos of the inside of the restaurant also, so.
Second, okay.
Did you want to add something before?
No, I was going to second, but Janet.
Okay, all right, so Peter made the motion and Janet seconded. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor of the stay of
Do we need to say, did you say it's effective immediately?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then he'll get his license back.
So all those in favor of an immediate stay on the revocation until the outcome of the ABCC hearing, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions?
Thank you very much. I'll coordinate with council.
Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda is, I believe, the Selectmen's reports. I think that's it. Yeah, well, that's often what happens when they're controversial. Yeah, why don't you, since you threw out your volunteer hat there.
Get this going. So the Historical Commission met. They're just generally working on Historical Commission stuff. There was nothing of significance to note. The LG has met twice since our last meeting, but everybody here has been at those meetings. I attended the No Place for Hate breakfast, which was on Martin Luther King Day, which was a great event, as always, and very well attended. The Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee met a couple times since our last meeting. On the 22nd of January, they had a meeting. Most of the notable part was their budget presentation, but that information's now outdated. And I attended their budget Saturday as well. I believe Janet and Franny were there as well. They voted their preliminary budget, and the assessment increase is going up 7.8%. Their actual budget at the time was going up 4.89%. There were 2 dissenting votes on that, although it carried, and then they're having their budget hearing tonight, so happening, hopefully it's over by now. So we'll have some more information probably tomorrow morning. I attended the Acton Center traffic study hearing or meeting, which was actually fairly well attended considering the weather conditions. They, at that point, were mostly seeking public input on the intersection. I mean, they're looking at the intersections of Concord Road and Newtown Road, 27, and then also, what?
Oh, the other side that comes off Concord Road to Main Street?
Yeah, and then what's our road? Thank you, Woodbury, thank you, which is actually a big issue. Anyways, there were a lot of people there, and as a person who lives there and uses that intersection frequently, I was interested. A lot of people there who made observations and comments. So the people we hired are going to go back, do some more observations, and develop some possible options that they will bring back to the public as well. And there were any other meetings were canceled or postponed due to weather.
Okay, Peter.
I attended a Kelly's Corner Steering Committee meeting. The consultants are still refining their concepts for zoning changes for Kelly's Corner. They had slideshows with a lot of interesting concepts, and I don't expect anything to be ready for, even if we have a fall town meeting. It looks like more like the spring of 2016. We had a CPC meeting. We're going to meet again on February 12th to vote on the recommendations for a town meeting. There were a lot of questions about some of the rec department's proposals. Actually, one question they had was about the selectmen's recommendations. I mentioned this to Mike. We sent 7 projects there. 2 of them had no votes at all because of the process where we only voted on 5. But so the question was, were we really not recommending them, or I just wanted to check with you folks. My understanding was we were still recommending them. They just didn't get any priority from us. So
The boardwalk in the
Chestnuts.
And the
chestnut,
water
right,
chestnut,
right,
yeah.
water chestnut. We're still recommending them. They just didn't have a priority.
Yeah, because we would have pulled them off the list.
Correct. They wouldn't have they would never have gotten to them.
Okay.
If we weren't.
Yeah,
So-
well, that's pretty much what I was explaining, but I wanted to make sure you understood the same thing. They had some questions about the bathrooms at Nara Park, and questions about how much they charge to rent out the picnic facility, and whether they could raise the rent to cover the cost of the bathrooms and maybe pay the CPC back. They don't appear to have any kind of stabilization fund or capital fund to, anticipate future repairs that need to be done.
Well, they have a revolving fund, and most of the revolving fund basically pays for programs and their summer help. So I don't think they've ever considered any long-term capital as part of a seasonal fee or anything like that.
Okay, well, I mean, that's one question that the CPC has, that maybe that should be part of their budgeting issues, so.
Can they work in, I know that the fees are supposed to be set only to cover the costs. Can that include long-term capital costs? I mean, I don't know.
Let me think about that one, I'm not sure.
That's just an
Kind
interesting.
of think of it in terms of like the transfer station.
Right, but that's an enterprise fund, so it's a whole different animal. Revolving funds have different roles.
No, you're right, you're right.
Okay, so that's one question they're asking. The other thing was, there's a lot of questions about the security measures at NARA also. They felt that they could do it much simpler than it's a big number for those.
I thought they had backed that down a little bit.
They took the lighting out of it.
Okay, all right.
But they still have the
gates.
gates that go up and down. They were talking, maybe people were saying maybe bollards and a chain with a lock on it or something would, do.
Well, they still want to get their vehicles through. See,
Right.
that it's, NARA still want, the staff at NARA want to be able to bring things up to the pavilion and back, and
Okay.
without it being, you can't get through.
And part of it was if sometimes other people's vehicles are allowed through, and I think they could change the code so that, like, if I
Right,
have
they
rented the
let other
pavilion-
vehicles, like
It could be
people that are
like a
having a
day
big
code.
party at the pavilion, they can
Okay.
bring barbecue people in and
Right.
stuff like that. I mean, part of the security issue, and I can't remember now, is maybe 3 or 4 years ago, somebody went out on the fields and did a bunch of donuts and did like $50,000 of damage or something.
$35,000 damage.
Yeah.
They have that issue, yeah. Anyway.
We actually caught them, though. So they
Okay.
ended up paying for it, but, yeah.
That's
they took-
helpful.
They,
But I think there was also sentiment that the boardwalk issue was, a higher priority than some of the other ones. So we'll see what they come up with finally. That's happening on the 12th. And the planning board met I think it was either last night or Tuesday night. I wasn't able to make it, but they did have on their agenda, I didn't get a chance to talk to Roland, to change, a zoning change again for Brookside Shops. So
Understanding they were ready to bring that back, but I don't know what the resolution is. I
Okay.
haven't talked to Roland either.
do you know if there's been any discussion with the neighbors out there? Because I think that was
don't.
what they were talking about doing before they brought it back.
I don't know if they did or not.
Okay.
no.
All right, well, I'll try to find out what's going on with that. But we may see that on the warrant this year, so.
Okay.
I somehow think the neighbors must not really understand, I mean, they worry about the ramifications maybe of expansion, but it's so constraining for the businesses that are there. But anyhow, Acton Community Housing Corporation met on this. I don't know if I already reported on these because I couldn't remember when our last meeting was, but on the 22nd, and Peter actually showed up to discuss the Richards property. The ACHC also heard a presentation of an idea that's in the very early stages, a proposed small-scale 40B, very unusual in that it would include an accessible group home for young adults with disabilities and would provide a community building and other amenities. We've already dealt with Nancy's request for funding to give to the Community Services Coordinator. Let's see, Acton Water District's meeting tonight, so I missed that meeting. Or I missed last night they met, and I went to Conservation Commission, but they're starting to plan their annual meeting, and I should remind everybody, I didn't know this because I'm part of the 5% that isn't a customer of the Water District, but all residents of Acton are members of the Water District, even if you aren't Water District customers, so I actually have started going to their annual meetings because I like town meetings or annual meetings. And the South Acton water filtration plant is moving right along. I haven't been by to see what it looks like, but in any event, Conservation Commission met on the 21st, which seems like a long time ago. They actually did close the hearing and issue a decision about the Arboretum improvements, which were so controversial and we heard about. They met last night talking about a proposed project, kind of controversial because it's on a large parcel that's mostly wet and just involves a couple of houses. So it wasn't a project that I particularly liked, but I'm not on the Conservation Commission. Design Review Board is hoping to meet on the 18th to discuss my suggested revisions of their charge. And at some point, if they finalize that, then the revised charge, the proposed one, will come back before us. Water Resources Advisory Committee, not much progress since December when they assured me that they would have the draft bylaw ready for town meeting, so I have a feeling it's not going to happen, and I will be talking with the town manager next week about some of that stuff. The Minuteman Vocational High School is having their breakfast meeting tomorrow, and I plan to be there. I'm hoping that the weather cooperates, no snow, just icy roads, but anyhow, I'm very sorry to hear at this morning's ALG meeting that Nancy Banks will be relocating and stepping down as the Acton rep to the school committee sometime in the spring. The Regionalization Finance Oversight Subcommittee met on January 30th. The superintendent was present, and basically we were trying to figure out what the status was of cost savings and so-called efficiencies, notably in Boxborough for fiscal 16. Just to be general, it looks as if those things are on target. There was some effort to compare what has actually happened in fiscal 15 and 16 with Peter Ashton's original projections, which town meeting heard when they voted on regionalization. And so I think Marie Altieri mentioned at the Budget Saturday that she wasn't going to take up time there. They were going to have a fuller discussion at a regular AB meeting. And there probably will be some sort of presentation at town meeting, a little more detailed about just the whole status of regionalization. I went to, on other things, not really liaison work, I went to this Policing After Ferguson kind of forum on the 21st at First Unitarian in Littleton. It included a panel of area police chiefs including Police Chief Frank Woodmeyer from Acton. It was very well attended. There were a few audience questions and comments that seemed unnecessarily provocative, and they happened to be from some Acton folks who shall remain nameless. But most of the questions and comments were aimed at learning and making good points. And it really kind of, the diversity coalition that I've kind of been involved in has been talking about the need for one-on-one communication to build all kinds of learning and understanding about among residents. And this forum really kind of reiterated that, because I think there were some misunderstandings that people had about Ferguson. I don't know, they just imagine that all police are racist or something, but which isn't the case. Mike and I last month heard just informally sort of some information about Phase 3 of Mass Ave anyhow. And I actually attended, I took up rapscallions on their sort of their soft opening on the 29th. I just went in, I got a tour because I used to go to Spriggs and I wanted to see how to change good pub menu, good selection of brews on tap. I shouldn't talk about that because we've been dealing with 2 alcohol-related hearings, but it's right down the street from where we live. I have a feeling we're going to be going there. And then I was also at the Budget Saturday meeting on the 31st. So.
Okay. I'm going to give you these. I need to get them back, but the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, met to discuss the Second Amendment of the TIP and their introduction of the Long-Range Transportation Plan Scenario Planning Update. This new tool will help them to determine priorities in the MPO projects, and there's an example of one that's on the website if anyone's interested in taking a look at it. HDC got postponed due to weather. Surprise. RTAC, Regional Transportation Advisory Council. Ryan Hicks, the Congestion Management Process Manager, introduced his latest tool, a dashboard view of the MPO region, highways and arterial congestion. This tool will help determine where to focus traffic mitigation more clearly throughout the region in the future. There's also a discussion about the UPWP, the Unified Planning Working Program. Project input for cities and towns within the MPO region can apply for study grants for potential problems within their communities, such as traffic flow around the train station would be a good example of something that we could apply for, a UPWP grant or a DLTA grant. So the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting, I think everybody went, no, except for Katie. And they held their annual event and trade show. The show was addressed by the new Governor, Baker, and Lieutenant Governor Polito, as well as U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren. There were many helpful seminars on everything from wastewater management to veteran services. The trade show got to highlight various vendors that the cities and towns can use to provide anything from legal to lighting. We attended a TRB meeting. The TRB group, which is the developer who built the new CVS over on Mass Ave, to take a look at their proposal for further development of that parcel. And there were representatives from all of the town departments that would be affected. There must have been 30 of us in this room. So, and the idea is the last time they went off and kind of did this in a vacuum, and then they came before the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen pushed back, and it was a huge surprise to them. So they're trying to avoid that going forward, which is a good thing. I'm glad to see they can learn. And a member of, I don't remember if there was a member of Acton 2020 there, do you? Or the Kelly's Corner group? But there probably should be a Kelly's Corner group meeting with them, just because of the things that go on there. ActonTV is in search of a new executive director for the studio. Acton Leadership Group, you're all there. We couldn't reach consensus for the 3 boards. With more to come. The Cable Advisory Board met with the Verizon representative to discuss converting to direct digital signal. Currently, an analog signal is being provided to Comcast, and Verizon pulls from that. They also shared, Cable Advisory Board also shared concerns that when Verizon installs fiber to homes, it has been removing copper cable without asking preventing a barrier or presenting a barrier or of cost to return to cable. So if you get Verizon and they put in fiber, and then you say, I don't like it, I want to go back to Comcast, Comcast is going to charge you for putting cable to your house. So they're saying that it's just better provide the service. We said, not like that it isn't. So they're going to stop. The LRTA, the Laurel Regional Transit Authority, continues to increase the number of trips provided in their fixed route services within Lowell and the surrounding communities. A year ago, they provided Saturday service as an experiment and are quite pleased with the results. They are now extending hours from 7 to 9 p.m. on the same routes. MassDOT has been pushing all of the RTAs to increase service, and the LRTA has responded well. Their main terminal parking has been closed for renovation for the last year and will reopen in March, 2 months early and under budget. So all of the commuters are very happy about that. And the Acton Nursing Service Task Force had its kickoff meeting Tuesday, and they elected officers and set a schedule for every Tuesday evening until town meeting to bring the latest information to share with the community. And that's all I have.
So ActonTV's looking, what happened to their executive?
They came to a parting of the ways. So,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
and we have a second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Oh, that was a slow eye. We call that a lazy eye.